Alrighty. Oh, hey guys. Thanks for dropping in, everybody. Let me know if I'm audible and visible. This time, hopefully, we have no intermissions. I think I figured out what the problem was last time, so hoping it doesn't go nuts this time again. My only fun thing about having a clip-on lav is you got to find a place to put it. I think I'm just gonna try and put it at the bottom of this V-neck and see if that holds up. All right. So let me know if I'm audible and visible. Bonsai. Hi, Ronald. Melinda, thanks for dropping in. Yep. Cool to know the notice is working. Hey, Pete, how's it going? Yeah, damn full idealistic crusades. Too many. Both real life and online and forums and who knows what. Just let me know if I'm coming through okay, so I can make sure we're good to go. Yeah, I think for some reason I'm hoping this is what the problem was. Okay, cool. Thanks for the thanks for the thumbs up. Yeah, I think what the problem was last time was that it's just apparently I was using my webcam and I had it plugged into the USB 3.0 port, and for some reason that can just make you get a blue screen of death for no reason. So trying the good old USB 2.0 port and gonna see if we can get through it. Because the time before I was using two webcams, one for the audio, and it worked just fine. So I guess I was using USB 2.0 for this one. So hopefully we don't have any problems. Oh, cool. Strictly Sega's in. Hey, man, how's it going? You were watching me this on live. Oh, well, I didn't plan for it to be that way, but I'll take it. Let's see. Ronald's talking about season 1 and 2 limited edition Blu-ray of Food Wars. That's a new one for me. I have no idea. I think I've heard that title in forums and such. I may have seen it in some of like the I think I saw it maybe in the Blu-ray.com, the new release schedule and the pre-orders and stuff, and you see all the titles for the next week or two. But oh, anime about gourmet chefs, cool. Oh gosh, that's got to be kind of fun. I am admittedly not deep enough in my knowledge on anime, so I need to beef up on that. Oh yeah, the Some Like It Hot Criterion box. Oh, it's wonderful. Even though it's just the regular Criterion style, I mean the artwork, it really is nice, and especially the fact that it's actually in color instead of black and white. I need to pick up the MGM one just to have the other main Laserdisc version, because I found, and I've talked about it a million times in my videos, I know that the later MGM ones would either just reuse the Criterion or better up the transfer technically a little bit. So I'd be curious to check that out, but it keeps eluding me. Of course, the artwork's not as nice. It's got that typical MGM UA airbrushed look to it, and then for some reason they made the background pink. I don't know why. And of course, the new Criterion Blu-ray looks great as well. So oh, Metro dropped in. Hey Metro, how's it going? Garrick, yeah, Wild Bunch 50th anniversary. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I'm actually kind of excited. My local art house announced they do small programs every once in a while, and usually for a couple weeks to a month. And they announced they're going to do a well, they've already started it, but it's a a films of 1969 and talking about the counterculture and stuff. They don't do like big full-on things like the Film Forum or something like that, but they try to do good smaller programs. So I think it's about 10 or 15 films. Unfortunately, most of them are, of course, DCPs and stuff, which for some are fine, but some even 4K DCPs will be just as problematic as the Blu-rays and 4Ks we rant and rave about. But the one I'm really excited to go to is they're supposed to get a print of the Wild Bunch, and I've never gotten to see a print of it, so I'm really excited. And I'm thinking it's got to be one of those 1994 director's cut prints. Of course, they made 70mm prints at the time as well, but I'd just be really excited to see a print of it and also check out the color timing, because I still really like the the final letterbox Laserdisc and that first flipper DVD, the one where you actually had to flip it over halfway through like a Laserdisc because it was the LD port and it was a very early Warner Brothers snapper case disc. But the color timing is really interesting. You know, the skies are really blue, the flesh tones are really pinkish. You know, admittedly, you could tell it's probably not perfect. You know, it's probably a little bit magenta here and there, like a lot of older video transfers, but I still kind of like it. And then when the special edition two discer came out on DVD, it kind of started looking a little green. And then the Blu-ray is kind of getting on up there because the master's old. So I'm really hoping a 4K is in the works at some point. But being Warner Brothers, there's the danger of, you know, teal creeping in and then getting like a Atmos remix with replaced sound effects, which would be really bad for the Wild Bunch. But some discussion started up on some of the forums, I think, because we're hitting the 50th anniversary. So I started thinking about it again. And, you know, I mean, the current Blu-ray is pretty good for what it is. It's better than the old two-disc special edition. And I do kind of like the updated cover art because it is like a reworking of the one sheet. But I know I'm totally getting on a Wild Bunch tangent now. All you have to say is Wild Bunch, and I'm gone for like 3 hours. But anyway, I'm hoping something happens for the 50th anniversary, and I'm definitely glad that all the talk about a remake kind of just went away, because if that ever comes up again, that just doesn't need to happen. Like, I didn't see the Mag 7 remake. I didn't really want to, but you know, I heard it was at least, you know, okay or passable, but something you really didn't need to do. But Wild Bunch is one of those you just can't remake. It just doesn't work. So I'm hoping they just kind of give up on that. And then I hope the other main Peckinpahs come to Blu-ray at some point, especially Pat Garrett, which really would need a, you know, multi-disc, multi-cut release from either Warner Archive or Criterion or somebody. Haha, Pete's asking about my issues with Alien. Oh man. Oh no, I get it. People thinking it's a perfect horror film and stuff. I totally get it. My thing is, uh, okay, first of all, I'm not big on, you know, like major scares in horror films. I never have been, but you know, if that's your thing, I get it. So when I was a kid, I kind of put off seeing Alien for a while because I always heard it was too scary. And then when I did finally see it, you know, my thing was I saw parts of it first, and it was the main parts of the story that I actually caught, the computer bank and uh, Ash's monologue once his real character is revealed. And I was like, wow, this is really great. It's not just a monster movie and it's really dark. Okay. And then when I finally saw Alien, you know, like everybody else, I was, you know, terrified to death, but I finished it and I'm like, wait, so the parts I saw before, that was all the story. That was my favorite part. So my thing with Alien is I can appreciate it. I think it's brilliantly designed. I love the production design. I love the ideas behind it and the intellect behind it. The score, you know, everything. That AC3 track on the 1995 Laserdisc is just a beast. It totally outdoes the old Dolby Surround mix, which is actually really lackluster. If you listen to the track on the Laserdisc box set version, it's the original Dolby Surround, the Dolby Stereo, and it's really puny on that mix, I gotta say. Even compared to like the original stereo of Star Wars or something, you know, which isn't really a fair benchmark, but like it's kind of wimpy, and then especially compared to that 5.1, it's like, wow, this is a lot more terrifying. But yeah, long story short, my thing with the Alien series in general, because you know I mean, I can also enjoy Aliens as well, but I'm not really big on it like a lot of people, it seems. It's just I always want more story. I know I'm a big narrative guy, so maybe I guess that's pretty much what it is. If that was a shorter, long-winded answer. Oh, Sega checked out The Awful Truth. Oh, fantastic. Oh man, yeah, yeah, especially if that was your first go around. That's such a wonderful picture, and I'm really relieved that it finally came out on Blu-ray. Sony's been doing like knocking out the part with their restorations, but a lot of times they haven't been coming to Blu-ray for at least a while, and then some have popped up on Criterion, that being one of them. But yeah, that's such a classic for a lot of reasons. You know, you have Leo McCarey directing, who is a great underrated director, and I think he was really the one that helped Cary Grant really nail his comic persona. because you'd seen it in flashes before then, but that being 1937, that was like when it all crystallized. And it's just like all of a sudden, Cary Grant appears like fully formed at the start of this movie. And if you look at any of his earlier films, you just see like little bits and pieces of it. And like especially Sylvia Scarlett was only 2 years before, and you can see flashes of it. Like he's there, he's obviously Cary Grant, but it's like not quite perfected yet. And I think it's really on the awful truth 2 years after that in 37, where it's just like he just appears and he is, the persona you expect. Um, Although I don't think anybody can like fall out of a chair that gracefully. I don't recommend trying. uh, Metro just watched From Dusk Till Dawn on Laser yesterday. That must be a fun watch. Um, I gotta say though, that one's still. I still remember when I first saw it. It really bugged me that it pulled the bait and switch from the beginning. That was like really dark, like a low budget indie crime film. Like oh gosh, there's one that somebody did. The one that Kiefer Sutherland did, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. I'm reaching way into my old school 90s indie cred there. And then all of a sudden it just like does an about face and says, no, screw you, we're a horror movie now. That's got to be a fun laser watch. Yeah, Wild Bunch is an all-time classic, and I'm super excited that I hope it doesn't change and they have to go with like a DCP or something. But I don't know if there is a DCP, because if there was, it would probably be just Blu-ray resolution. I don't think they made a higher res one, because the Blu-ray was like what, 2007, 2008, so it's an older master anyway. So I'm really hoping that we see some 4K action on it. Anybody know if there's a colorized Laserdisc of The Longest Day? No, and colorization is terrible. Don't do it. I don't know. Was that ever colorized by anybody? I haven't heard of that. I don't know. To me, the black and white really makes that film because it's so long. I really do need to rewatch it. It's been a long time. Unfortunately, the Blu-ray's got a lot of DNR going on, so it's kind of. I mean, it's not like 100% wax faces like the first Patent or Predator or something, but it's got a lot. So much so that the DVD is still pretty good. Let's see, we've got a bunch of stuff at once. Have I watched everything on this wall behind me? Well, this is just one wall. My only problem is I don't have enough shelf space. These really good shelves I've been using unfortunately are only 5 shelves, and as you can see, I had to expand space. And I still have my bookshelves. There's books on them. This is my film bookshelf, or at least one of them. And I always have to turn it into just cubby holes. And then if I get one thing and want to reorganize, well, that takes all day. But most everything I try to, I've gotten to where I have to just try and watch. If and when I get something in that's new, I have to try and watch it pretty close to then. Otherwise, it'll just go on the shelf and then you forget about it. And then you're like, oh, wait, I really feel like watching. Hey, wait, don't I have a copy of that? Yeah, I think I do. Where is that? Oh, wait, is it on Laserdisc or is it on DVD? And then you like knock off a Blu-ray off the shelf, and that's the one you're looking for, and you have it on Blu-ray, and you can't even remember what format you've got it on. That's when you know you have problems. uh, hey, Elvin, thanks for dropping in. Yeah, Butch and Sundance 4K. Yeah, that's actually, I think there's significant rumor that that's actually in the works. I don't know if there's a master done already, but I know there's a lot of talk on the forums that that's supposed to be arriving on UHD at some point. I think, of course, that being a Fox film now with the Disney buyout, there's no telling if they're going to like postpone stuff or delay it or something. But I know that one's rumored, and then the entire original Planet of the Apes series is also supposed to be in the pipeline. So those will be really good, especially Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, because the current Blu-ray, while it's better than the DVD, it's again an old master, old scan. Some people don't think the color's super hot, and personally, I still watch the Laserdisc box because the transfer is really nice for the day. It's got PCM mono. It's got a good amount of extras. And it was supervised by I think both the director and cinematographer back in the day, or just one of them. I can't remember if it was both or just one. Sometimes it's hard to remember how long some of the old guys were, still kicking around, if they were still alive during the early days of video when they first started doing those, supervised transfers. Um, yeah, no color as long as day. I didn't think there had been one. I guess it was a pretty bold decision to do that in '62 and make it all black and white for such, like Daryl Zanuck's big epic comeback to the industry, his big super European production, to actually do it in black and white. Though I don't know, I haven't ever read for sure, but I'm sure it might have been like a shrewd way of cost cutting. Just pay for black and white stock because you're paying all the stars their massive salaries to get them in there. Um, let's see. Um, okay, do I like Saturn III and Logan's Run? Oh boy. I don't think I've actually seen Saturn III. Yeah, I don't think I have. I've seen Logan's Run, of course, and I really like Logan's Run. Um, Even though, it is obviously very 70s, and unfortunately the Laserdisc reissue with all the nice bonus features is very hard to come by. Even the original letterbox one's hard to come by. The Blu-ray just has a 5.1 remix, but the transfer is pretty good. I do think it's kind of dated, but it's also kind of dated in sort of an endearing way. So I kind of like it for some of the inherent cheesiness, but it was a science fiction film from a major studio that was actually trying to be, serious and do real SF. Um, so in a lot of ways, I guess I would kind of put it on the same level with Soylent Green, which is another film that I really like the concept. I love all the actors in it, but it's like it's dated in those certain ways and kind of a bit cheesy. But again, it was one of the few, major studio science fiction productions that was actual legitimate science fiction. So I have to, give it props for that. But I need to see Saturn III. Actually, I need to see Longest Run again. It's been too long, and I can't go too long without getting some Peter Ustinov. Uh, oh yeah, Pete, I agree. I like the mystery in Alien. I love the whole backstory of well, basically I love the computer scene so much, where it's basically, okay, sort of spoiler alert, but I'm sure everybody here has seen Alien by now. That, basically the company has sent them out there on purpose to find this thing to try and weaponize it. So they kind of have an idea of what's out there, and they've used these space truckers as guinea pigs, right down to setting them up with an android to follow up on the real mission. Like that is pure thriller writing there for me, and I love that sort of duplicity and narrative. So I'm like, for me, that's my favorite part of the whole movie. Like, I just want like a whole movie about that, and like the fallout from that. That being said, there are people who do claim it's like, because it is essentially, I mean, it's not really a remake, but it's the same concept as It, the Terror from Beyond Outer Space, the '50s B sci-fi film. Um, but yeah, there are some who will claim that it's basically just a big budget '70s remake of It, the Terror from Beyond Outer Space. So yeah, I do agree that the mystery is like 70 to 80% of the experience of the original Alien. The mystery, the unknown, the depths of shadows and everything. So yeah, it really gets in your head, and I do appreciate it for that. But also, I don't like things always getting in my head. So uh, oh yeah. Sony's got a survey of possible 4K releases. If anybody hasn't seen that, I know they posted on Blu-ray.com. I think Home Theater Forum as well. I don't know if you can just find it on the Sony side, but they give you a choice of potential and upcoming 4K releases to show your interest for catalog material. And then there's a second question that allows you to vote on, I think it's like 5 or 10, maybe 15 titles that I think maybe they're thinking about releasing. And then there's a write-in spot. So if anybody hasn't done that already, be sure and just take 2 seconds and do that, because it's the first time a studio has really expressed interest in figuring out if, there's interest in catalog titles, which there is. Some of the ones they said are some of the other Capra titles, which I am really huge on, because these pull off the shelf here. These beautiful 4K restorations that they've done over the past 5-6 years have been popping up in these wonderful digibooks, and they pretty much have done the main Capra library, and then they did these through Sony, and then a couple more have come out through Criterion, obviously. But these have been like really staggering, and they've played in 4K DCPs, but they of course are only out on Blu-ray. And a lot of these were included in that. And since they're already done in 4K, it would be extremely easy to put them out in UHD. But of course, a lot of people would say, well, they're older films, they're not really going to have 4K in them. Well, you know, that's technically true in a number of ways. And the fact that these were all sourced from, you know, deteriorating elements all over the place and had to be restored multiple times. But UHD is not just about resolution; it's also about, you know, increased bit rate and so on and so forth. So it will be a marked improvement, and it would be really nice if, you know, there was a committed, you know, committed classic catalog treatment for 4K. So definitely check that out if you guys haven't. I know the write-in spot, you could only put like one, and I tried to cram like 3 in there because I was just thinking of so many different things. I'm like, but you could put this or this or this, and then there's this. Oh, damn it, they only want one. So yeah, definitely, it is a really important and really awesome to see one of the majors stepping up to the plate and actually, you know, opening up a discourse with all of us. So definitely fill that out if you haven't. See. Okay, Pete's still musing on Alien. Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying the original Alien doesn't work. I'm just saying for me, I wish the main story of the company's motives was exploited more, because to me that fits right in with, you know, dystopian thrillers, dark 70s paranoia and thrillers, and it fits right into the decade, and that's stuff that I really love. So I'm always like, man, I wish we could have gotten more on that. But yeah, you know, you do get a good identification with the various characters, and you do really feel for them, you know, when they, you know, finally do meet their ends. So you know, I can agree with that. I just, it's one of those films that I can acknowledge is great, but it's not something I always want to pull off the shelf, you know. And honestly, even though I don't really like the criticism, Ridley Scott gets a lot about having, you know, tons of great visuals, but not a lot of great story and not a lot of great substance. I can see where people come from with a certain number of films. I know we've been talking about Legend on the Culture Dog podcast, Culture Dog Livestream, and Legend is one of those where I really think the story just doesn't quite have enough weight to it. It's an enjoyable experience every once in a while, and the visuals are stunning. But you know, that's another one where I'm like, I kind of wish there was more for me to sink my teeth into narrative wise. But it's, you know, I still enjoy Legend. I still enjoy Alien. So I'm always happy to have these types of discussions where we can just like go back and forth. um, Oh, there's a film that connects Pulp Fiction to From Dusk Till Dawn. That's interesting. I guess it's a short film or something. I know Tarantino was doing like a couple shorts around the Pulp Fiction era and some of those like anthology films and stuff, but I'm not surprised. I'm actually surprised they haven't announced there's some like overarching Tarantino Rodriguez universe that's a shared universe of all these different productions to then send all the fans into a tizzy. Oh man, I shouldn't give them ideas, should I? The Grindhouse universe. Oh gosh, that sounds horrible. Who needs Wild Bunch when you have Wild Wild West? Well, yes. Funny. I've only seen a few episodes of the original show. I really want to actually watch it now because, you know, it's one of the. I mean, it's not really a spy show, but it did follow in the spy craze, and I really enjoy all of the products of the spy craze, whether they were good or bad. So I do need to see that. torched already. Oh wow! So Longest Day did get colorized somewhere. That's interesting. Huh. Okay, so it's on the list of colorized titles, but not on Laserdisc. Hmm. Yeah, it does seem like there was a lot of stuff that was either colorized and just shown on TV once or twice, or maybe they lost the rights to it or something. Because like the list is a lot longer than you ever see like video copies of. And then I think there were a bunch of like really cheapy colorization attempts by like some of the public domain labels back in the day. So they weren't even as good as the official ones. Because I remember there were a lot of public domain films that suddenly got that treatment, and I got suckered into buying a number of those when I was a kid. And films again, I really wanted to see. I was like, wow, this is like $2 in a grocery store. It's got color on the cover. I thought this was in black and white, and then I put it in, and it's like this god awful like globs of just stuff on the screen. And I'm like, what is going on? That's when I thankfully discovered the good old color and saturation level on your CRT, and you can just dial that off and then live with a crappy black and white transfer. Um, your real books. Oh yes, I'm still a book nerd. Still a complete printed word devotee. I don't use an e-reader, although they're extremely convenient. And you can get books on Kindle and stuff for astoundingly cheap compared to the print version. But it sometimes I just have to wait until I can afford a copy or read it from a library or something. But a lot of stuff has never been transferred to e-readers or digitized, and then a lot of stuff is only in like obscure old paperbacks or collections and stuff, especially film theory, film history, criticism, stuff like that. And the way I first started even getting a hold of some of this material was whatever dusty old book I could find in a library. And I've always wanted to have a library of my own, so uh, I can't say no to cheap books, even if I don't know what they are, or free books, and then I have no space left, so it doesn't help. Uh, ah, Pete is Pete is saying Red October is not better than Die Hard. Ooh, ooh, man, those are fighting words. No, I'm kidding. um, no, for me, I think it is. I think, um, but then again, it's much more of a spy thriller, which is arguably my favorite type of story. And I just think I do think it's McTiernan's best film overall. But Die Hard is such a genre classic, and everybody knows it. Whereas Red October is much more of like the I wouldn't want to say it's more of a movie for an older crowd now, but it's much more of like people who actually read Tom Clancy or espionage novels or who are into naval history, things like that. Um, but yeah, for me, it just hits all the right notes. So, and I do think it's like supremely underrated. It's got brilliant sound design, great cinematography. I've always loved I remember seeing the one sheet in the video store, and it was years before I even saw the film. I was a little kid, and I saw the red and black and the just Connery's giant face over nothing but red and black, and it looks so imposing. I actually really would like to have that one sheet poster. I love that image. Kind of mad that the Blu-rays and 4Ks just switched to like some Photoshop job, but yeah, I'd love that poster. But yeah, I can go back and forth. I mean, I still love Die Hard. I love Die Hard 2. I'm like one of those weird people, and I like Die Hard 3, and I even like Die Hard 4. So, um, but yeah, for me, Red October is McTiernan's best, and I would actually put it above Die Hard because I love Red October. Um, and I'm still really sad in a lot of ways that Baldwin didn't get to continue in Patriot Games. I don't think the overall film would have been all that different because I think they still probably would have gone with Philip Noyce, who is a good director who's very underrated, and Patriot Games is still good. But basically, there was studio power plays going on, and they basically decided they wanted to go with Harrison Ford instead. And I do think the film's kind of lost something. And because I do think Baldwin does a phenomenal job. I still think he's the best Jack Ryan, period. And I'm not like a giant Clancy fan or anything, but I've read a number of the books. And I just think everything in Red October works. I really do. Um, sorry to Metro. It's like I personally like Red October just a little bit more. So I got one. I got one. I can take that. Let's see. Pete's talking about everybody says different things about film processing. Some say the original negative has all the color of the theatrical, but others say color first shows up on the prints. Well, yeah, because you gotta take into account, stuff has to go to the labs. Every lab is different, and you're usually working from inner positives because you don't want to touch your negative, and your negative hasn't been fully developed and things like that. And then your final answer prints are going to be what's used for making the batch of 35 millimeter prints. And then on top of that, there's another thing where the first prints you would get back from the labs would be great. They would be sent to the major cities, and then eventually they just start churning stuff out. And then because nobody was going to check the 555th print that was supposed to go to Kansas City next month. So there wasn't a lot of consistency, especially earlier on. But by the 90s, it was better, but you still could get a bad print. So if like somebody manages to get a reel of something or see a print of something being shown, and they say, "Wow, this looks terrible," chances are that the print has either not been taken care of well, or it just wasn't printed right in the first place. So there's a lot of variables, and unfortunately, not everybody understands how many there can be. Um, and how different films have different processes, because as I say, you shouldn't be working from your negative. That didn't stop people, especially back in the day, and that's why so many films need real restorations, because a lot of times they would make prints from negatives, and so when they go back to original negatives, they're ripped apart, torn up. They have sections that have dupes in them and the negative is gone. All the 70 millimeter films usually had all their prints printed directly from the 70 millimeter negative. So that's why those are in exceptionally bad shape. And then regular films, like I know Robert Harris was saying Rear Window's negative was used to make like some super high amount of release prints. So it was just in horrible shape and the yellow layer was gone. Um, and that's a standard 35 millimeter film. It shouldn't have, that much damage to it, but it did, simply because they were like, oh no, the negative doesn't matter. We can just keep making prints off of it. So, uh, if says nobody brings a Red October to make peace with America, that's stupid. No, no, it isn't. It's like one-upmanship. It's leveling the playing field. So it's not a yes, it's the new weapon that one side has. So the defector from one side takes it to the other side. So then everybody's on a regular playing field, and that's really a bedrock of spy and thriller literature of either preventing something falling into somebody's hands. It's all about maintaining the balance of detente, essentially. That's why Bond destroys the ATAC at the end of For Your Eyes Only, or the ending of Ice Station Zebra when they destroy the the transmitter with the microfilm and stuff. It's all about that balance, whether you are taking something from one side to the other to put everybody on level field, to then negate that secret item. So no, I don't think I think that works. Let's see. Ooh, a lot of people that did. Okay. I guess you're talking about Alien, Pete. A lot of people that did the designs, art, storyboards were originally on Jodorowsky's Dune before that fell apart. That totally figures. I can see that. Um, yeah, Mr. Smith does look great on Blu-ray. It's all the Capra Blu-rays are just revelations compared to even the best restorations before that. Um, Yeah, yeah. I mean, ostensibly 35 mil should be, 4K fine, but even if you look at the, 4Ks on the Burton Batmans, and you look at the capture difference between the 1080p and the 4K, even though the 4K doesn't have all of the issues of the 1080p disc of the color grade stuff, there's not like a huge amount of extra detail in there, which I was kind of surprised by. And then everybody's like, see, there's not 4K in these, and it's just the later ones that have more resolution in them. And then with the Capra titles, they come from such a mix of different sources, and sources that have to be like, especially Lost Horizon, which has just been, patched together from all cobbled bits and pieces for I think the AFI restoration started in like the early 70s, like 74, 76, and they've been working on it ever since and finding little bits and pieces. And they just found the extra minute to put back into the 4K and Blu-ray. So that one, because there's 16 mil in there, there's a lot of 16 millimeter even in the current Lost Horizons. So that would look it'd be very noticeable on a 4K screen. But again, 4K is not just about the resolution. So there is, it's really important that we still keep catalog titles going in 4K, even if, they're not going to be ostensibly, maxing out the resolution of 4K, because there's stuff that won't even do that on DVD. And, that's talking about 480p. So. Oh, okay. Colonel was directed by one of the directors of Four Rooms, a full-length film about the woman who drove Butch from the fight in the taxi. Ooh, okay. She's obsessed with death and ways to murder. Ah, who isn't? Aren't we all? Okay, I guess I'll have to check that out just to see what that's all about. John McClane is the definition of non-logical. Well, I don't know if he's maybe the most patient of police officers or patient of guys in general, but he's like the human Energizer Bunny. You just can't stop him, can't put him down. Oh, okay. Metro's got the HD DVDs of the Jack Ryan films, and it's got the old poster art. Yeah, I think the very first Blu-ray copies also did the same, and then they switched over to the Photoshop jobs, which actually. I have not picked up the 4Ks yet because I pick up 4Ks when I can to future-proof myself, but I'm just waiting for all the Paramount titles, the Jack Ryans and the Mission Impossibles to come down some. But I had already picked up the Blu-rays a couple years ago when they went on sale, so this is one of the more modern Red Octobers, and this isn't the worst, but it's also just so much more generic, and honestly, it kind of looks like the a mix of the K-19 Widowmaker cover with the, or like maybe covers of U-571 or something like that, or like any of modern Navy movie or something. And it doesn't just have that iconic, and then weirdly, Patriot Games has the original art. And then I think the other two in here do as well. So I don't know why they did this, but they switched the art around. And I know these also have some Photoshop jobs, but for some reason, Red October is the one that they just decided, nope, we're going to just ditch the original artwork. Because I've even seen it poking out of Walmart bins. And I'm like, well, if there's one that has the original art, I'll just switch my box set copy out just because it bugs me so much, but I've never found one. So I know they're out there somewhere, but of course I have the Laserdisc, the AC3 Laserdisc, the first DVD, and the special edition DVD because I have problems. See, I told you I like Red October. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Die Hard is totally believable. It works. I'd say the only thing that ever kind of irks me is the very end when Hans just appears, but that's also set up to give another character closure, so I can live with it. But that's the only like discordant note every time I watch Die Hard. I'm like, I always forget how much I love this and how inventive and different this was, and groundbreaking. And then every time that comes up, I'm like, but I understand. I get it. Then again, I love Die Hard too. So so I totally love the series, and I hate what's happened with the last fifth one that I pretend never happened. And I really hope this Die Hard 6 young John McClane prequel just gets thrown out. It just sounds terrible. Let's see. I love how this has turned into the Red October versus Die Hard debate. Well, now you gotta keep in mind that's Ramius's way of also getting asylum, because he could come over here and just be thrown into a prison for the rest of his life. It's offering it's not just a peace offering. It's not just a way of showing faith. It's also showing seriousness, credibility, and it's also a gift. which that was also a common theme, even in regular standard defections. It was like you brought certain information with you or something the other side wanted. So and something that bold and drastic shows that you are serious. And he also had misgivings about stuff going on in the Soviet High Command, things like that. So I don't think that's really an issue. Although I haven't reread the book in a while, and I do need to, just to see if there's anything else I forgot that was in the book that wasn't in the movie. Um, let's see. Metro's asking about, do I think critics are far too harsh on certain films these days? Um, especially blockbusters, they seem to take a bit personally, and they can be very harsh, and they seem to not know how hard it is to make a film these days. Yeah, I do think there's kind of a bit of bias, like especially whenever the new juggernaut you know summer tent poles and blockbusters come out. Like either everybody says it's great, or they just want to rip it a new one simply because it's the new studio product. And but then again, I've seen a lot of smaller films get savaged, and then I've seen a lot of stuff get praised where I'm just like, I don't get why is this a 4-star review? Like I thought it was terrible. Um, I do think people can get swept up into, and this goes for critics as well. Like I think critics can kind of get swept up into what's going on at a certain time, and if a film comes out around a certain time period, like okay, say for example, the movie Widows, which I didn't really intend to go see, but other people I knew wanted to go see it, so I went with them. And I'm just sitting there, and all of us were just kind of like scratching our heads. I'm like, this is one of the worst things I've seen in years. Like this is just terrible. And the story was nothing but plot twist after plot twist after double cross, and it just didn't make any sense. It was really annoying. Had tons of stuff that didn't make any sense and just didn't seem well put together. And then I come out and I see a 4-star review talking about the brilliant editing and direction and tone and character and this and that. And I'm like, what the heck were you smoking? That was terrible. And then I've seen, people go along and say that some of the Marvel stuff, for example, is great, even though they think it has problems, they still give it a 4-star review. And I'm like, you can't do that. Um, and then like Dark Phoenix is out now, and everybody savaged it because it's not really well liked by anybody, and it's not a Marvel production, and it's like the last gasp of the Fox X-Men. Um, and I haven't seen it yet, but I remember the same thing happened to Apocalypse, and I got Apocalypse on Blu-ray and just watched it one rainy day, and I'm like, well, it's not horrible. It's not like what they said. Like there's actually some good stuff in there. There's some stuff that seems like it's from another movie, but it's definitely better than a lot of the Marvel stuff that I've seen. So again, I don't know. But yeah, I don't think they ever acknowledge how hard it is to get a film off the ground. Like if they do, they're talking about uh, industry insider stuff. And I'm like, well, if I want that, I'm going to go read Variety, or I'll read the Hollywood Reporter, and I'll read between the lines to get around the gossip crap. Um, so yeah, it's film criticism has really just kind of imploded, I think, um, because you don't have the same reference of, um, people really aren't worried about being seen as important critics in print or in books anymore. It's either online or especially stuff on YouTube, like stuff on YouTube and video clips and things like that's just like that's more general reaction than anything. And unfortunately, there's very few channels out there that really do any sort of history discussion, analysis, real criticism, and it's like finding a needle in a haystack. And unfortunately, with the internet kind of democratizing and opening everybody up to be able to get their 2 cents out there, it's kind of you know in my opinion, it's taken film criticism and set it back like 100 years. Not to be all doom and gloom and depressing and stuff, but that's kind of how I see it, unfortunately. Um, let's see. We all have that one film we love so much that we have every copy ever released. I have too many of those. I actually, I don't know. I think there's several that I actually do. Then again, just the other day, I was in one of the local, well, it's not really a record shop. They carry everything. So game, music, movie, one of our local uh, bread and butter shops for us. And I was looking, they got a big bin of VHS tapes. They're having a sidewalk sale of like their back storage and stuff. And that's what I've got mostly here of stuff I picked up. But they had a bunch of VHS tapes, and I was looking at them. I'm like, I really don't need these, but there's a couple I would just to get. And I nearly got the tape of the head of tape of Ronin, and I love Ronin so much, and I talk about it all the time. And we've had it just got brought up again on the Culture Dog stream. We were talking about Heat, and everybody for some reason wants to put Ronin against Heat, which for me is no contest because I think Ronin is my favorite film of the past 25, 30 years. But I was standing there and I'm like, I will never watch this. I have too much stuff already, but something in me really just wants to buy the tape of this. Um, but yeah, there are a number of those, and then you're kind of staring and just like, why do I have 7 copies of this movie? I only need one. And it's not one of those cases, where there's different versions where you need the soundtrack of one and another has extras. Like that's, I can understand that. That's what I try and stick to. But there's a couple where I have sentimental attachments to like the old or like the first copy I got or my old tape from childhood, and then the first DVD version that I had to save up for. And I don't just want to, give it to a shop for like 10 cents or sell it on eBay for a quarter. Um, so yeah, I think we all have a number of those. Clear and Present Danger was better than Die Hard 4. Well, yeah, I don't really think that's a fair comparison, to be honest, because Die Hard 4, I was, and I still am, I'm surprised it's as good as it was. I don't think it really indicated that it was going to be that good, and it actually does work, even in the PG-13 version. Um, but yeah, Clear and Present Danger is a good movie on it in its own right, and Philip Noyce again is a very underrated director. Um, and I'm actually kind of surprised and kind of sad that he hasn't done a whole lot. Because I do love the '97 Saint that he directed, which is also very similar to the Jack Ryan films he did. And then the 2002 version of The Quiet American is just phenomenal. If you guys have never seen it, it's Michael Caine. I still think he should have won the Oscar for that. It's a phenomenal. It's one of his best performances. Brendan Fraser is great in it, and it does Graham Greene's novel justice, unlike the earlier version, which I think I want to say it was like 1959. And so basically, if you did Graham Greene in the 50s and you weren't Carol Reed, you basically had to just totally rip the heart out of the book. But yeah, I wish he was doing more. I think he started doing some television, like some I don't know if it's Netflix or something. I've been meaning to look that up. That's made me have a brain flash to do that finally. Let's see. Metro says he's having issues with Jack Ryan 4Ks. Okay. Says there's some irritating flickering in there. Well, I am really excited to check them out because everything else looks like they're big improvements, although most anything would be a big improvement on the Blu-rays for Present Danger and Patriot Games, which have a ton of DNR. The Red October one's okay, but they're mostly based off of the older DVD masters, just, like given a fresh coat of DNR. So I am excited to finally see those, but I'm sure they're probably, not quite perfect because, why put so much effort into a catalog 4K release? I'm just surprised they ever happened. Thought we'd be stuck with these DNR Blu-rays forever. Let's see. I was reading some reviews for Universal Soldier: The Return. People ought to be ashamed of themselves for some of the nasty reviews written. Okay. Yeah, some films are a guilty pleasure, but I think a lot of times maybe people have an axe to grind, or maybe they just had a really bad day, or they don't take into account the fact that not everything's going to be perfect, and you got to just I think people find it hard to give films like an average review and then say it is what it is. It's a decent thriller with not enough plot that's technically like a big budget B movie, and just be a little bit more honest. Which is kind of a shame because really sometimes it's as easy as that. It's like an overblown B movie with a bad ending. well, that makes sense, you know? Anybody could understand that. Okay, Sega saw the new Men in Black movie. I don't know if you can even call it Men in Black 4. I forget like it's like Men in Black International or something, I think. Um, yeah, it's like a, a great movie for Netflix to put on while you're playing with your phone. Well, that does nothing says dull like a recommendation like that, does it? I don't know. When you look at the trailer, you know they've got Chris Hemsworth in there, so it's like, well, now they kind of want some Marvel juice in there. It did kind of seem like it was one of those where they wanted some Marvel flavor in it just to keep this franchise going. But I don't know. It just seems like it's just suddenly here, and it's like, oh, yeah, and then you've already forgotten about it. So, yeah, I think I may watch it at some point when it comes to Blu-ray, just on a rainy day or something. But doesn't really, and the reviews and all the indicators, it doesn't really want to make me go run to the theater to see it. I wasn't really big on either of the two sequels, really. So I'm just surprised they're keeping it going because I thought there would never be a third one. So that was a surprise. Even more surprised there's a fourth one. Um, uh, Okay, so they were talking about the director of the Universal Soldier sequel and Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah, everybody seemed to like to harp on the action stars of the late '80s, early '90s, and like harp on their limited acting ranges. But that's not really a criticism. If you say it a million times, you don't have anything else about it. And say what you will about Jean-Claude, he does have a sense of humor about himself. He kind of enjoys seemingly making fun of himself here and there, and I always kept the sense that he really was trying, not so much like Steven Seagal, who still seems to be convinced that he really is that great. Um, but yeah, yeah. So even though he did do a lot of junk, like everybody did back in the day, a lot of them are still guilty pleasures. So yeah. I think the guilty pleasure factor also does not factor into a lot of mainstream published criticism, unfortunately. Um, yeah, Sega. Wow, Mark Kermode is one of the few guys around that I actually follow. I look at all his YouTube uploads, and every time they post a review from the radio show, I actually listen to it because I post it on YouTube. And even though I don't agree with a lot of his stuff, he does actually take the time to explain why and be a bit more honest. And so yeah, I don't know a whole lot of currently working reviewers and critics over in the UK and Europe as of now. But of the ones that I do really know, he's probably my favorite. And again, critics should be somebody you don't agree with every time, but you understand where they're coming from. And they should give you a valid opinion and not waste your time. And I think he does that every time, even when he's trying to convince me that I need to go see Mamma Mia 2. I'm like, okay, all right, Mark, I see where you're coming from, but yeah, that's not really my thing. But he was giving it a good review and explaining why. So I'm like, okay, I respect your opinion. Thank you. But yeah, it seems like a lot of people, especially back in the day, like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that was just really, really harsh and just for like no reason. Um, yeah, Alvin, I do like Medicine Man. I've been meaning to rewatch it. I've got it on Laserdisc, so I've been meaning to fire that up. I'm so behind on all my Laserdisc watching. I have this insane desire to watch every Laserdisc that I've accumulated, so I need to get going on that. That's got to get moved to the top of the extremely large stack of watch discs. Um, okay, Metro's got all the Jurassic Park issues of the first three. Um, Okay, except the steel books from Film Arena. I guess those are probably like import steel books. Those can get pretty difficult to find and very pricey to import sometimes. I know a lot of people, especially on the Blu-ray forums, are like really zealous about getting like every steel book, like the German Iron Man steel book or the Japanese steel book of, like, it just gets really ridiculous. And I'm like, okay, I guess you like steelbooks. I didn't even know it had one. Um, let's see. Well, yeah, I mean, Pete, you do kind of have a point. Doesn't exactly matter how hard it is to make a movie. If it totally sucks, then it sucks. Yeah, I think that would come into play if critics were, which just does happen sometimes, if they like specifically single out and target people and say, like the work wasn't up to standard when it really was, or they're doing like personal attacks. That's where that really comes into play. But yeah, there are times where it's like, you get out of something and it was so bad, and it's like you have wasted my time and you have infuriated me for wasting my time, and insulted my intelligence. And it's like that's where I personally will start to go along the path of, well, the mindset of, okay, well, it was okay, but like the work was not up to scratch. Like there were inherent issues in the editing, or the directing of some scenes wasn't really up to par, or like I think it is fair to make criticisms like that, but you have to draw the line. You never want to like go out and make it a personal vendetta against somebody, because it's the work you're criticizing, not the person. Um, so yeah, but you are right. If a movie does suck, then it sucks. Uh, Melinda has gone for the full Lion King experience. Wow, from here and around the world. That's got to be a lot of little Simbas. Oh man, shameful. No, no. If that's your thing, no, that's not at all. Like, I guess it would be really shameful if you suddenly blinked and you didn't even like the Lion King and you had 75 copies of it. Oh, okay. Like on Transformers, Michael Bay can tell you about all his hard work, but at the end of the day, it's still oh, that's yeah. Yeah, sometimes you listen to, like, especially those, press kits that are included as extras sometimes, and it's just a total piece of junk they're talking about, and it's just like, "No, no, I can't take this seriously, like, don't insult my intelligence, this is terrible. People on the crew worked hard, because that's their job, but I don't see you really working that hard, and if you did, maybe you should be doing something else, because this is terrible." Oh, yeah, that guy really irks me. I gotta admit it. Like, yeah, I can totally get the whole internet, memeing of everything he does, because it's just like, man, I can't take this seriously. Uh, yeah, yeah, no, no, especially, yeah, I agree, Metro. Yeah, it's fine to think a film sucks, but yeah, some of the stuff that certain, I wouldn't say less reputable, but certain critics can start to go into is just ridiculous, and there's no room or no need for any of that stuff, really. Not when you're doing your job right. Um, yeah, when it comes to Star Wars, you need 200 million copies because all of them will have a problem somehow. I know on the original trilogy threads, this was at least a couple years ago, somebody put out the opinion maybe George has some sort of interest in VHS and Laserdisc parts and repair companies, so that he gets a chunk for people having to keep their players going just to watch Star Wars. Um, Not that I believe that, but it's an interesting thought to chuckle over. It's like they're convinced we have to keep going with Star Wars copies. Okay, okay. Metro's got some childhood favorites that were never taken seriously. I can understand that. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's not necessarily very good, but you see it at the right time and it means a lot to you, and you got nostalgia attached to it. So yeah, I can agree with that. And then very few people are willing to even begrudge a film anything. Um, that's why I always try to say, like, even if if there's like one great scene in something or a great moment, I talk about that or I acknowledge that, even if it's a film I hate, or something that I just really didn't like or had a lot of problems with, I'll acknowledge what it's got in it. Like for example, the final Mummy film in the original Universal cycle, wow, The Mummy's Curse from it's the last of the 40 sequels, And after the very end of the previous film, when they sink into the bog swamp in New England, all of a sudden in this cheap B movie, we have been transported to the bayous of Louisiana, no explanation given, and the time period seems to have changed as well. And the movie is barely over an hour, and it's really quite terrible. But there is one phenomenal scene when the female mummy comes out of the bog swamp when she, well, out of the swamp then, because it's Louisiana now for no reason, when she awakens from her mummy slumber for lack of a better term. It is a riveting, like 3 4 minute long sequence where she comes up out of the swamp and she's all covered in dry mud and she can't move, and then it starts to crack as her limbs start to move again, and it's all done with real makeup, and it took them forever to do to shoot it, and it's in this terrible tiny little B movie that's so cheap it's like an insult to all the mummy movies that came before it. So I still go back and rewatch that, and I still talk about that one scene, even though that film is pretty dreadful. So yeah, I always try to do stuff and talk about it. If there's anything good in there, I will try and bring it up. Uh, let's see. Oh no, no, Pete, you can always bring up Disney and Pixar, and then you can lead me into talking about the evil Disney Corporation and their constant revisionism, because I always do that. Oh, 4K is here. How's it going, man? Uh, yeah, yeah, I'm swimming in disc to watch now. Oh man, you have certainly ensured on helping with that, Melinda, with those wonderful mystery boxes. I am just now overwhelmed. See, my thing was I started with just a handful of discs. I never even thought I'd have enough to have on a shelf. It's like when you start, when you have like those 3 or 4 discs, and somebody asks, "Well, what the heck are those? Those are records, aren't they?" And you're like, "No, that's a laser disc. You got to explain it." And they're like, "What the heck is that?" And it's like the 3 you found at a thrift store one time, and it's like a copy of Top Gun, one Criterion disc, and something else, and then 3 suddenly becomes 10, and then like maybe a year later you find a few more, and then all of a sudden you have hundreds of them, and you're like, I don't have space. What am I doing? Uh, yep. I am swimming in this. Not quite at like Scrooge McDuck swimming in the vault levels in his gold coins, but I don't know. Hopefully, I'd have better shelving if I had that like a LD vault. Okay, Pete's talking about Wally, about the difference between the opening and second half, and yeah, I do kind of agree with that. It's getting talked about more these days, but I remember when I saw it in the theater, you really get hooked on the opening and how it's very post-apocalyptic wasteland and like social commentary because it's all garbage. And then when you get to the ship parts, it's like, okay, I can see where this is going, and then it just kind of, I don't know if it's quite exactly generic, but yeah, like the structure of it. Yeah, I can kind of agree with that, because I remember even thinking that in the theater when I first saw it, and I'm like, oh, I kind of like the first step better. Can we go back to the planet? Like, oh, okay, 4K just finished the Criterion Taxi Driver laser. Awesome, man. Yeah, that's one of those. It's still a hole in my shelf. I've been wanting to pick it up for ages because it's got the mono mix on it. And for a while there, it was the only way to get the Criterion commentary, of course. But now that's on the Blu-ray. Um, there's talk now. I know it's supposed to maybe be coming to 4K, so I hope it does. Even though the current Blu-ray is good, 4K could be even better. And it being Sony, I wouldn't really worry about it being teal crazy because it's not a Warner Brothers disc. Warner Brothers, we like teal. Oh, sorry. I'm still PO'd about the Burton Batmans having teal in them. I don't know if I'm ever going to get over that. But I hope if they do 4K, they'll bring the mono back. I mean, the sound remix is okay, and they did it for Dolby Surround, I think, for an 80s reissue that Scorsese supervised. And I think the 5.1 is like an upgrade on that. But I do think it needs the original mono back, and I need to get the CAV one day. And then, of course, it's got all the different covers. I think Daisuke put a video out about Taxi Driver talking about some of those. And I don't know exactly why Criterion did, like, it's like, what, 3 or 4 different cover variations for all of them? Maybe like 5, actually, once you count the CLBs. But yeah, that's one of those Criterions I have been meaning and dying to get for ages. And it's like every time I find one on eBay, it's just like too expensive, or I miss it in a group sale post or something. So, um, yeah, and that's really the one good Laserdisc release, because all the Columbia ones are earlier pan and scan discs, or they don't have all the extras and stuff. And so it's pretty much just the Criterion that's laser friendly. Metro must be the only one that doesn't like Steven Seagal at all. Um, I didn't think I would, and really the only films that I like that he did, Under Siege, and see, my problem is I mix up all the titles because they're pretty generic, but it's pretty much the ones that Andrew Davis directed. If you look at the directors of all of them, Andrew Davis did the main Seagal films, and then after Under Siege, he went on to a little movie called The Fugitive, and of course, pretty much pulled Tommy Lee Jones into that from the success of Under Siege, I think. And I think after that, like I remember Under Siege 2 was actually pretty good, even though it's on a train and the plot setup's a little silly. But I think outside of that, so it's like Above the Law, Under Siege, and there's one other one. I think Andrew Davis directed 3 Seagal films, and then I'd throw in Under Siege 2. But then again, I haven't seen all of them, and I figure I need to just go through and do and watch every Seagal movie, every Van Damme movie, every Chuck Norris film at least one time, so I have a frame of reference. I also kind of want to do that with like all of the like Clint Eastwood B films and 80s films and stuff, just to at least see them all one time and figure out which title goes with which film and get a better grounding for it, even though I know some of those are terrible too. So yeah, I need to just do that one day, bite the bullet, and go into full B 80s 90s action movie cheese mode. But some of them are actually quite good. But I'd again say it was probably because Andrew Davis was a pretty good director for that type of film. And I think The Fugitive really shows that, because that was right after Under Siege. Let's see. Let's see what Blu-ray we talked about. I guess we're talking about the Taxi Driver Blu-ray. Yeah, I mean it is a stunner. It's actually I still love the packaging on it. I know they did the mastered in 4K, but I never picked that up. But let's see where I have it on the shelf here. Yeah, of course have the Digibook, which is one of the best ones. Like it's got the textured cover and kept the wraparound on it, but the for a Digibook, it's extremely well done, and it's actually got the book printed separately. Because I mean, Digibooks are cool, but I like having a separate printed book because it's kind of annoying to have to read the booklet inside. But it was a big improvement even over the last DVD. But I did actually hold on to that one. It's back on the shelf before I forget. Because if you don't put it back on the shelf, you turn around and then you trip over something and you or it goes flying. But I did keep my DVD copy, which has the really strange, kind of difficult box to open. This is the final camera. I think this is under the collector's edition banner. It's they had the this is the collector's edition. This had several go-throughs on DVD, but this is the one with the actual plastic. And it's not an obi strip; it's an actual box ending. But the printing on this and the imagery is just great. So it's basically this similar aesthetic as the DVD, because it's got the sort of goldish color on it, and then it opens like this. But in a lot of ways, I actually like this packaging better than the Blu-ray, because it just seems so much more stark, and uses iconic stills and stuff, and very, very simple but very effective. And this was the first main copy that I had, and just dove through all the extras on. So it's not really worth anything these days, but I still like the packaging, even though this thing is really awkward. I never understood what this thing was supposed to do, other than, I guess, look cool. And then it also never wants to go back on fully because it just catches on stuff. So it took me forever when I first got this to get good at sliding it on and off. But yeah, if you want to talk about cool packaging, that is a great little DVD if you're a Taxi Driver nut, and it's probably like dirt cheap these days. So if you want to be one of those people with every version of Taxi Driver, that's a pretty cool one. Let's see. Let's see. Melinda's talking about when it comes to children's films, they dub instead of subtitle. So, so if you want to sing along, you have to sing along in another language. Yeah, that's kind of funny. I don't know. I've never listened to the Lion King songs in another language, but I bet some of them are a bit of a tongue twister at least. um, yeah, I'd rather watch the last 30 minutes of Wally over Cars 2 any day. Yeah. I did see Cars too. My sister, who's a big Disney nerd, was like, "Yeah, it's not very good." I'm like, "But you don't you're good with most anything Disney." She's like, "Yeah, I know it's not any good. Just don't ask." And I think because I usually get her any Disney movie she's missing or Pixar movie she's missing for birthdays, holidays, gifts, and stuff. I got her Cars and Cars 2, and that's when she told me that. She's like, "Oh, great, you got me Cars and Cars 2. I'm so thrilled." I'm like, "But you didn't have it." She's like, "Yeah, I didn't have it, but I don't know if I want it." I'm like, "Okay, I'll take your word for it." But yeah, I did see it finally, and yeah, I mean it's not like atrocious or anything, but it's just like so subpar that you're just like, why is this a thing? Why am I watching this? Um, oh wow, your uncle was in the Palatine rally as an extra. Man, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's definitely something to tell your parents. Hey, mom and dad, I was in a movie. I'm an extra. See, go watch this movie called Taxi Driver, and get to like three-quarters of the way through, and then this big rally, and I'm in the background, and this dude is totally unhinged over in the corner and totally about to just explode like a human time bomb. But you'll love it, mom and dad. I'm in the movie. Uh, wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, usually if you get to be an extra in something, it's just like super generic or not very good or something, and you just don't want to talk about it or anything. But yeah, that's awesome. I don't know if I'd ever gotten the chance to be an extra in a Scorsese movie, I probably would have been stuck being in The Aviator or something, and then I just want to like put my head through the wall. I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I was an extra in a movie once. Yeah, let's not talk about it. Let's move." like, like you would get the Scorsese movie nobody likes. So then again, I wouldn't have mind. Oh, I mean, technically it would have been before my time, but popping up at like the background of the pool hall in Color of Money, or being in the nightclub in After Hours or something. But yeah, that is a great extra story. Man, that's fantastic. I bet that must have been an experience. Probably a lot of long hair and running around because they were. I can't remember if they were. I don't think they were always behind schedule, but I know it was a tough shoot, and they had to, make sure the studio was actually going to let them make the movie and stuff. But yeah, he was walking down the street. The guy said, "Hey, you want to be in a movie? Just stand over here." Yes, the '70s. Very much simpler times. No 5 million forms of paperwork. It's like, hey, stand over here. We'll give you $5 and you can be in the movie. Uh, yeah, it's like my favorite story where Guy Hamilton recounted getting the scenes for Goldfinger of the dawn attack on Fort Knox in the spring of the Delta 9 nerve gas, having all the soldiers, ostensibly collapse. And he got this one platoon on loan, and they drove around all these different spots. I was like, all right, at the blow of the whistle, look up, and I blow it again, and you all fall down and play dead. And they're like, and he's like, they all thought I was insane, but I said you get $5 and a beer, and for that they do anything. Let's see. Sega got the fun of being an extra. Well, yeah, I mean, at least if it's an okay movie, at least you can show it to friends and stuff. But it's not really. It's not the romanticized experience you think of. It is very hurry up and wait, and just like you'll spend your entire day, and they do one setup, and sometimes you have to come back the next day and do the same thing over again. And it's just like, what am I doing? And then if you get the full extra rate, it's just like minimum wage. And then you get a check in the mail like a month or two later, and you're just like, oh, what is this even for? Oh, wait. Oh, why did I do this again? Oh man. the fun and joys of being a part-time non-union extra. Not fun. And even if you don't have anything to do, it's actually, quite hard because you have to just stand there forever and ever and ever and make sure you don't do something stupid or flashy or screw something up. And then, you feel like everybody might be staring at you, but they're really not because you're like the 15th guy in the background, but you're like, oh no, somebody might see me. uh, yeah, I've done a few things here and there, but nothing really major, and helped out in a lot of student things when I was in film school, and then usually not had it reciprocated when it was supposed to be. So then I had to be my own actor a lot, which is that leaves a lot to be desired. But it's I'll just say again, it's not really the romantic picture you think of. Um, Before I forget, because I have a habit of running my mouth and forgetting, I do have a number of pickups, mostly from the local store sidewalk sale. The thing I put on the I didn't even know these existed. I'm actually super excited they do. I've been talking about how I've recently kind of gotten more into the classic serials, but I've also always wanted to read the classic pulp magazines. But of course, collecting original pulp magazines is very hard and will get very exorbitantly expensive because they are prone to deteriorating. Um, but then there are all these great specialty labels that have done reprints. And I knew these existed, but I didn't know anybody had published them. These are the first two volumes. They only did three, apparently. They're titled the Master's Edition from Pulp Adventures, Inc. But the first two volumes of Zorro Pulp Adventure stories, all written by the original author, Johnston McCulley, after the first novel, Curse of Capistrano, in 1919. But these are extremely beautiful, well printed. Um, Printed a lot. Like I did finally pick up one of the Shadow Pulp reprints, and I'm hoping to get some more of those eventually. But it's sort of the same. You get a little bit of illustration, but they're pretty much faithfully copied from the original pulp magazines. And apparently, these are extremely rare and were very valuable on the collector's market for a long time. They only did three volumes after I looked it up, and the third one is really hard to find. But I got these for about $4 or $5 each. And apparently, there's another company now doing volumes. They're selling them through Amazon for, I think they've done 6 volumes, which may be all of the Zorro stories. But I haven't. I'm going to read these, and then I'll probably check out some of those to read some of the others. But really, really cool. And like I said, I had no idea any of the Zorro tales had been reprinted. And I think you can actually get most of the stories in those new reprints now. But yeah, for a long while, those were the only way, and then they went out of print really fast. Now, this one was just in a bin of books, and it was literally like 50 cents. But I have the ones for Batman '89 and Batman and Robin, so finally got to the official movie book for Batman Forever. And this is, of course, primarily just a, like it would have been a souvenir program back in the day, but it's packed with these floppy paperbacks are hard to do, but and show, but they're packed with stills. That's primarily the main thing. And there's some interviews with a few people. That's mostly like cast and press information, trying to do it and hold it up. It's kind of hard to show a lot of inside of these when you're trying to do it on camera, but the stills are really, really nice. And like I said, I have the ones for Batman '89 and Batman and Robin, so I've been trying to find the other two, so now I have to find the one for Returns. Then I also picked up, they had a ton of comics and just, boxes, and I usually don't go into that because I'm like, I already collect too much stuff. And I also hate reading a multi, comic story and just, getting part of it in one issue. But this one was sticking out, and I know there's not a whole lot of this character in modern comics, so I just couldn't resist, for a few cents. So this is, I don't know which issue, actually, this may be like issue 16, I think it is, of the DC Comics Shadow Strikes. Really nice looking art there, and I just always loved the Shadow character. So I just saw this sticking out of a big box of random comics, so I just had to take it with me. And also on the back, there's an ad for the film Flight of the Intruder, which I've seen Laserdisc copies of and just never watched it. And I don't have it on laser, I don't think. But now this makes me kind of want to go see it. Let's see. Also, there I did pick up. They had a ton of DVDs for a quarter. So I think DVDs are starting, at least on the used market, they're kind of getting like CDs, where everybody either wants like something vintage or they want, Blu-ray or 4K or whatever. So I've actually found there's a number of stores that will have blowouts and sales. So sometimes I've just said, well, I mean, this is so cheap and I don't have a copy of it. So this is a film I've wanted to rewatch for a while, and I've never managed to pick it up on Laserdisc or Blu-ray, so I couldn't say no for a quarter. This is the Fox DVD of The Edge. Great thriller written by David Mamet, directed by Lee Tamahori. And this has a nice widescreen transfer with 5.1 AC3. So it's pretty much probably the LD master, but it was a quarter. So that's cheaper than the Laserdisc copy or anything else. So, and I've wanted to rewatch it for ages. I just got this on Laserdisc, but again, this DVD was a quarter, and apparently the DVDs for this are pretty hard to find. And then Twilight Time did a Blu-ray, but I think it's out of print. So I picked up the Fabulous Baker Boys Laserdisc. I think this is the first one from Artisan. I think MGM did one later on. But this one also has a 133 version on the flip side. So it's got a widescreen and which is probably from the Laserdisc Master that I picked up. And it's got the 133 version on the other. And I love this cover art. So yeah, it was a quarter. And apparently even the DVDs are quite rare. This one was a must. I hadn't seen this in ages. And I think most of these films with Pam Grier have now hit Blu-ray from different labels, but I did have a copy of this, and again, it was a quarter. So this is the MGM Soul Cinema branded release of Foxy Brown. It's got an audio commentary by the director, so hey, it's a movie with a commentary for a quarter, and a classic Pam Grier flick, so can't say no. Also picked up, I've heard of this, I've just never got to see it yet, but the Artisan DVD of Suicide Kings, and I can see Christopher Walken do anything. So, sometimes I just have to go a little bit nuts when I come across these, big bin sales where things are just dirt cheap. For all of our Snapper Case fans out there, I picked up the Snapper Case release of the film Sleepers, which is, of course, also available on Laserdisc. But again, this is a nice Snapper case. It was a quarter. It's got AC3, and of course, with a Snapper case, you get your interior chapter art. Now, I haven't actually seen the jacket for the Laserdisc of this, but I'm sure it's probably extremely similar, if not the same. But I'm one of those where I've kind of gotten a little bit nostalgic for Snapper cases now after all this time. This one was in there, and it was kind of a different thing to see. Usually you just see generic junk in the cheap ends, but they had the MGM International Rescue Edition of Thunderbird 6. And I've only seen like bits and pieces of the original series, so I figured this would be a nice way to see. I guess this is one of the features that spun off of the classic series, but it's got some featurettes and a commentary. And again, I was surprised it was in the 25-cent bin. Then I also picked up, again, I was surprised this one was in there. Usually you find the Snapper Case one, and I never got the Laserdisc because it's surprisingly not widescreen. But they had the 2-discer special edition of New Jack City, and you can tell the difference because it's got the red banner around it. But it's got a good number of extras on the second disc and a commentary and stuff, and a 5.1 track. So it's one of those like mid 2005 era or so Warner Brothers special edition double dips like Heat or something. But I didn't have a copy of it, and I've never gotten the Laserdisc because for some reason it's not widescreen. Another surprise that's actually a pretty good film I haven't seen in a long while, but the Walter Hill picture Crossroads. This is a really interesting picture. I think somebody just put it out on Blu-ray, one of the specialty labels, or it may have been like the Sony Choice line or something. but it was pretty expensive. And again, the DVD is uncommon, so it was in the quarter bin. But this is a really interesting film if you've never seen it or heard of it. It basically plays all around with the urban myth about Robert Johnson becoming a blues virtuoso overnight by going to the crossroads and selling his soul to the devil, essentially, to become a proficient blues musician. And then you have this young fellow, played by Ralph Macchio, I think this was post Karate Kid, trying to follow in the footsteps of the classic bluesmen. And so it sort of plays with fantasy a little bit, but it's also, a young coming of age road movie as well. And it's actually really, really good. And you forget that Walter Hill made it, so that means it has quite a bit of grit in it too, and just really nice and surprising to see in the bin with everything else. And then, of course, I think everybody has to have a copy of this movie at some point. It's one of those where the Blu-ray is just not that good, and I realized I didn't even have the DVD of this, so I had a copy of High Fidelity, and you got to go back and rewatch it every once in a while if you've ever worked in a record store or collected records or something. It just, it speaks to all of us record nerds at some point or another. This one is one of those repackagings when they first started doing digital copies. So the cover is a bit different, and it's all about, ooh, you get a second disc with a digital copy on it, which, is just flopping around in here. Now, ooh, it's a digital copy disc, which means it's a freaking coaster these days. And, the original regular disc, it's one of those cheapy Miramax style discs anyway. So it's the same as the other one. But yeah, for some reason, this and Grosse Pointe Blank and a couple of the other Cusack films and other films of this era, they've just gotten, DVD, Laserdisc on some, and then just a crappy Blu-ray. So, a quarter for the DVD, I can do that. And then, last but not least, again, a film I've wanted to pick up on Laserdisc. I'm holding out to find the remastered one, because the regular widescreen one's pretty common, but I'm like, I'd like to find the remastered one. But they had the special edition reissue of Rain Man in there. And this one has all the MGM extras, commentary, and stuff. It's got, I believe this has 5.1 on it. Yeah, it's got a 5.1 remix on it. But the MGM Blu-ray uses this same transfer and is framed a little bit differently from the remastered Blu-ray. And some people like the older framing, but I just didn't have any version of the film, really. And, it's a nice looking cover, and it was a quarter. So, again, I've kind of gotten to where if something is literally that cheap, I can't really say no. Let's see. I got a bunch of comments. Oh man, Ronald met Foxy Brownhead Shaft. Wow, that's got to be fun. Oh gosh, I probably would have been totally fanboying if I ever met Richard Roundtree. I'd be like, yeah, yes, Shaft in Africa is actually a great movie. Oh man, it still makes me sad that this new Shaft movie is out and it's just a joke, and apparently Richard Roundtree's only like in the last 15 minutes, and it's like, man, I would have killed to have made like a dark modern Shaft movie where he's all old and you deal with the issues of mortality in addition to all of the societal issues we still have today. So you could do a lot of great stuff there and make a really nice serious movie, but they just made a Sam Jackson action comedy because that's what they do. Oh wow, talking about the end gunfight and open range. Yeah, I don't think it's the best one, but I think it's probably just about the most realistic Western gunfight because it's dirty, it's loud, it's designed to be realistic to the point of it makes you kind of almost sick to your stomach in a way, like you're actually watching this happen because we romanticize the West so much, but it really was not pleasant. So and the DTS mix on there is great, and I'd love to get the Blu-ray. I think it's out in Germany or France or both, but unfortunately they've never put it out here. So I'd finally given up, and well, it's over on my DVD shelf, but I have the 2-disc DVD. A-Trax dropped in and is having fun with okay, we got some Pixar and other animated stuff going on. not a fan of Shark Tale. I I think I saw a few minutes of it. I never really watched the whole thing, but it's one of those where I think they took the celebrity cameo thing or celebrity performance thing to such a like super high level. When I was like, why do we have a movie where there's talking animated sharks and fish, and there's a room where there's De Niro and Scorsese as like sharks talking? Why is Scorsese in a cartoon? Why is this happening? Like I don't understand. Um, House picked up a few CDs. This is I've been getting more into. I've been actually on a Genesis, Peter Gabriel, Phil Collins kick for a while, and I think all three of those artists, if you're taking them all separately, are hugely underrated. So they had the soundtrack for the film Rabbit Proof Fence that Peter Gabriel did. So here it is, and it's actually got a nice slip cover, some pretty cool art. I think Peter Gabriel is just about incapable of making something that looks boring. Even the side has a fun thing, but you don't often find scores in the soundtrack bends. But yeah, can't say no. Even though I've never actually seen this film yet. So, and then talking about all those guys, I've also wanted to get more into Mike Rutherford's other band, Mike and the Mechanics. So this is the CD of the Living Years album, and I would have gotten the LP of it, but just to show you the difference between what people perceive the value of vinyl and CDs to be, the store had a scratched up copy of this album on vinyl, and it was $5, and this was 50 cents. So, you know, I can take a well mastered CD for you know, a low cost and be totally fine with it. Let's see. I picked this one up on a lark. It's a series I've wanted to watch for a long time. I love the 1994 film, but I know the seasons are pretty difficult to come by. They can usually go for about $20 a pop, and then after the first two or three, they became MOD discs from the Warner Archive. So those you have to special order, and they're like 30 or $40. But they had the second season of Maverick in the store, and they had a store sale going on. So this was literally about $4. So I'll have to get the first season to watch through it first. But seeing as I know these are kind of more difficult to come by, and it's actually got a full-on digipack case, so it's got a slip box and everything, and the discs are on much sturdier hubs than Warner usually used. So this is kind of the style they switched to for some of their later box sets. But unlike those, the hubs in here are, you know, a lot sturdier, because these are very prone to breaking, and then you just have all of the disc platters flopping around. You actually get a booklet too with the episode guide. So these are really nice for a classic series, especially a classic Western series. So at least for the first two or three of these, Warner was putting them out, and then they just decided to stop. Actually, this didn't come out till 2013, so this is pretty late on in the DVD game. But yeah, I've been meaning to see it for ages. And talking about tapes, I did pick up one tape because I'm weak. And this was actually the one tape I didn't buy as a kid and I never had. And this completes my collection of one film on all formats. And I just better just go ahead and say it. I bought the Batman and Robin tape. So now I have every issue of Batman and Robin. The only reason I picked this up, it's in perfect condition. The slip sleeve is perfect. The inner tape is perfect with the label. Yeah, I didn't think I was going to come across another perfect copy, especially for a quarter. So, yeah, I just had to have all four on the shelf. So now I have all four Batman films on VHS, Laserdisc, DVD, special edition DVD, Blu-ray, and I'm getting there on 4K. So since we were talking about all that fun stuff, I had to, and after all this time, I've kind of come to enjoy the pain of watching Batman and Robin in sort of an endearing way. Like, you have to acknowledge it was so bad and just live with it. So I guess I've kind of come to terms with Batman and Robin. Yeah, they should have made a Small Soldier sequel at some point, especially Shark. Yeah. Let's see. Oh wow, for Expendables version of Shaft, gather all the 60s and 80s black action heroes. That would be interesting. It'd be like I guess maybe something like Black Dynamite, but you know, less overt comedy and just getting everybody together. I mean, I'd be down for that if they, you know, shot it right and didn't just fill it with crappy CGI blood or something. Oh, Melinda's asking which Disney boxes am I still missing? Ooh, oh wow. Um, dang, I should have gone over all my collection on the database. I think let's see. I know I'm still missing Pocahontas. It's Pocahontas and Toy Story that are the mid '90s boxes that I'm missing because I do have the Hunchback one, and I'm also missing the Lion King because I just have the regular CLV of that one. Um, and then those are like the last boxes because after that, like even Hercules is just a regular gatefold for the CAV. So it'd be those three, and then I don't know how many of the archive releases are full-on box sets because a lot of those are just, you know, gatefolds. But yeah, I think for the box sets, it's pretty much those three are like the big gaps for me. And then after that, it's filling in like all of the regular CAVs I'm missing, like the '98 Rescuers reissue, the Oliver and Company, 101 Dalmatians, like the couple I haven't been able to pick up yet. But yeah, for box sets, I think it's those three from the mid '90s. I've almost gotten Lion King before. Like every time I find a decent price copy, I'm like, oh cool, I can finally. And then I get like outbid at the last minute. But Toy Story and Pocahontas seem to elude me. Toy Story most of all, like that one, like sellers usually put a higher price tag on it. And I'm like, well, it's just a CAV box. It's not like anything like exclusive. Um, be like you know, putting a DTS price sticker on it because the DTS one is hard to find. Um, so yeah, I think it's just those three. Do you have any of those weird early Blu-rays that came in DVD cases? Oh man, I remember that still happens from time to time. You see the listing and it's like Blu-ray in DVD packaging, and I'm like, no, I don't want that. Like, um, I never have gotten any, but I've seen them. I've seen people get them, and I've gotten gifts for people that have come in the DVD case. But yeah, I don't know what was up with that. Like, it's like just pick one or the other, you know. And I think they pretty quickly figured out they could put a DVD in a Blu-ray case as well as a bonus, and then just stick to one case, and then just do the DVD separate for the people who still wanted DVDs. But yeah, that was kind of bizarre, and that went on for a long, long while. And then you'd see like 6 listings for something on Amazon. It'd be like Blu-ray standard packaging, Blu-ray limited, Blu-ray DVD and Blu-ray case, Blu-ray DVD 3D, Blu-ray and DVD case, Blu-ray, DVD, and DVD case, 3D Blu-ray, Blu-ray, and DVD and Blu-ray case. And it's like, why? Just have 2 versions. That's all you need. But yeah, that was just weird. Um, yeah, if the mask can get a pointless, terrible sequel after a decade, I guess Wally could someday. Oh man, oh man, Wally makes A-Track fall asleep. Wow. What, were you just really sleepy? Or did it just like, did Wally lull you to sleep like a sleep machine? That'd be really interesting, like a setting on a sleep machine. It's like ocean waves, nighttime city, Wally noises. Man, that'd be different. Got a couple more things down here in this magical box. Um, I did finally. I was in another part of town, and I decided I was right next to a random Big Lots I didn't know existed. So I was like, "Well, I can just pop in here for a second and see if they have any of those, you know, random finds like the Alien box set for $5 or something." Didn't have any of those, and nothing really interesting. And I was headed out, and then I saw on the bottom shelf there was a bunch of DVDs, kind of just like piled on top of each other, not really organized. And I pushed them to one side, and then underneath it was this guy, which is the Fast and Furious 7 movie Blu-ray set. So it's 1 through 7. And this was in a lot of Big Lots a couple months ago, and I just never found one. But this was marked down to like $7. It was originally $10. And when things sit in Big Lots, eventually they put like clearance stickers on them that take off like a buck or two, and you get this nice little digibook. But it's the same regular Blu-rays. And I'm not really big on these, but I really like the first one's pretty good, and I still kind of like the second one. So I'd always intended to get those on Blu-ray because they have really great beefy 5.1 mixes. So and oh yeah, also you get a bonus. I think this is a DVD. Yeah, a bonus DVD with some extended extras and things. So for $7, it's a no-brainer, especially since even used, each of these costs like $2 or $3, and I never saw 6 or 7. So and plus I actually sold the digital copies, so that was a few more bucks off. So I really got all 7 of these for like $4 or $5. So yeah, I'd held out to get the first 2 until I could get like a double feature or something to cut down on price. So nice little slim box of all 7. So definitely check your local Big Lots if you're looking for these, because you can still find these floating around on shelves. Ooh, let's see. Metro has trying to figure out. Only have the Terminator on Laserdisc, or okay, okay. I guess you're talking about Blu-ray because you're talking about Never Say Never Again for 150 bucks on eBay. Yeah, the print run on that just suddenly disappeared. Casino Royale 67 was the same way, but it hasn't gone like to the exorbitant prices because all of a sudden um, I'd had Never Say Never Again on my Amazon wish list, and then one day it went to unavailable, and then the next day it was $150 or something. I'm like, what? It was just $10. Um, and I'd gotten the because this is before I had gotten fully into Blu-ray, so I had saved up and bought the collector's edition DVD with all the new extras and the commentary. And I was like, wow, I finally get extras for this movie that I have such a love-hate relationship with. And I watched them and it was great. And then I was like, oh, wait, I should have just gotten the Blu-ray. Oh, crap. And then I went to get it. And of course, it was then gone. And so it took me a couple years, but I did finally manage to snag a copy. You can actually get some of the I think the British and French, all the European ones are the region 2 ones are region B are region free, and that's what most people have got. But unfortunately, those are now out of print as well, and people charge a decent amount for them. But it took me a long while, and I got lucky on an eBay listing with this one. But it's not like a super great Blu-ray or anything. But I am glad that I did finally manage to track it down. That being said, every time I watch the film, I'm always watching my Laserdisc copy. So, uh, and actually, I was actually going to bring up Never Say Never Again, because I think it's pretty cool how Culture Dog started doing like a movie of the week, and I was like, well, I don't want to do exactly the same thing, but if I pick something, it has to be something interesting that could be a really good discussion topic. And I'm like, oh, Never Say Never Again, that's a perfect one. So I guess next time, if anybody's interested, maybe give Never Say Never Again a fresh watch, or if you've never seen it before, see it for the first time, and then we can talk some fun $52,000 wigs next time. So, and if you don't know, that was the cost of Connery's toupee for the film. It broke records in 1983, and that's always been one of my favorite jokes. Uh, so yeah, if we want to talk some Never Say Never Again next time and do a strange, discussion-provoking film of the week. Let's see. Oh, okay. So, so you saw Wally when you were 5, and it made you fall asleep when you got the DVD. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I guess that'd be hard to get over if that's the first way you saw it, and give you a lot of particular memories. uh, Wait, Good Dinosaur. That was just a couple years ago. I think that's the one my sister dragged me to. I mean, it was okay, I guess. There are worse ways to spend 100 minutes or however long it is. Um, yeah, yeah. The way they say DVD plus for Blu-ray plus 3D Blu-ray, it's just like they would say widescreen and full screen. Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. But at least back then they were telling you important, pertinent information. Now you just get like that blue bar on top that says digital copy. Oh my gosh. And I'm like, thank you for telling me about the first thing that I'm going to throw out. Sorry, I finally decided I'm just going to keep a jug of water with me because I get so parched doing these that just having a cup of water doesn't help. So that way I don't have to get up every 10 minutes and get more water. Okay, talking about Blu-rays and DVD cases. Yeah. Yeah, Never Say Never Again, even with, yeah, because that's the thing I forgot to mention. I bought the DVD and I didn't know there was an edition out there that had both because I even at that time I was already like trying to future-proof myself the same way I did with 4K now. Um, and it's like they didn't send those everywhere, so I just bought the DVD and I could have bought that and had the Blu-ray when it went out of print. I was like, no. So that's why I was like extra determined. I'm like, there can't be one, even though it's not a Bond title, it's a quasi Bond title that I'm missing. Like, that's just gonna bug me. So I was very happy to finally find it. But yeah, the reason why that would be 150 is because it has the Blu-ray in it, um, which used to be it'd be a cheap way of getting the Blu-ray because people wouldn't realize that it's in there because it's a DVD case, or you wouldn't have as many bidders on an auction because it's in a DVD case. But I guess people have caught on to that. Okay, yeah, yeah. Laserdisc is really cool. Cool. You don't have to deal with the region coding and all the inherent copy protection of VHS, for example. But yeah, and that means you can play any NTSC disc and an NTSC US player. So Japanese imports are fine, and that's really cool. They can just work right out of the sleeve. But then of course, you gotta, yeah, like Pete points out, you gotta have something for PAL discs if you want to get into PAL discs for whatever reason. Um, it's I mean, it kind of makes sense though. Like if you're really that dedicated about PAL, all you have to do is go out and get a PAL player. Kind of like now, where if you want region-free Blu-ray, you just have to go out and get a region-free moddable or modded player. If you're that determined. But Laserdisc makes it pretty easy for everything else. It's pretty, all in the same standard. No crazy decoders or special tricks you have to jump through or trying to defeat copy protection on VHS for whatever reason, things like that. So I did think it was pretty interesting that you could just, jump right in and have no problems. And then if you want to play a Japanese disc, just pop it in your player, no problem. So that is pretty cool. And it's about the easiest way to do that in any format intrinsically because everything else you're going to have to go through things and region locks and stuff. If you just want to throw a disc from another country in your player without any fiddling around. Um, yeah. Is there a Bill Paxton movie collection? Is there a Bill Paxton set out there anywhere? I don't know. Uh, Gosh, it's still kind of weird to think that he's gone. He just was always around, popping up in different things. I still feel like I haven't seen enough of his other stuff. Because I remember after he passed, you always are like, man, I wish I'd seen more of their stuff. So I think I still kind of need to. Yeah, yeah. Oh, so you did see Walling Theaters? Okay, yeah, I saw it. I actually saw it on film. I saw it at one of our actually saw around a local independent theater, sort of run. It's basically a mom and pop, but they have it's an older theater with multiple auditoriums, but it's not a multiplex. But they can do really good presentations in there. So I saw it on film with just the standard Dolby 5.1, and yeah, it was actually a good presentation. I do like seeing digital things on film sometimes just for the quirks of it and seeing the added inherent film grain, things like that. Of course, I saw it, on original release. I was much younger, but it still does have a good sound mix. I still need to pick it up on Blu-ray. Haven't rewatched it in a long while, and I'd like to crank it up in the home theater and check out the sound mix again. Um, oh, cool! Metro got the Man with the Golden Gun letterbox Laserdisc. Yeah, that is actually surprisingly difficult to track down. I think because it was along with the License to Kill reissue, that was the last letterbox Bond disc we got in that series. They came out in '94 or late '93, and so they have the matching artwork with gatefolds, and then the back is black with the Gun Barrel 007 logo in gold along the side. But yeah, that is a fantastic disc. That's my favorite copy. I think that's really the best way to watch the film in terms of getting color just right, no tomfoolery going on, and the mono mix on that thing is really potent. Like it doesn't jump out at you at first, but if you put on like the older 133 disc, even the one with digital sound, and then you put that one on, like it done even 2 seconds, the difference is just like wow. They must have gotten like some magnetic master or something because it sounds great. Um, and I know there's rumors that Golden Gun did have a stereo mix. Whether it was used or not, I don't know. It's one of those Bond films that apparently may have a stereo mix floating around somewhere in a vault that just has never been used. So that disc is so good, I wouldn't be surprised. But it's also the source that was used for my first copy was the mid '90s VHS tape. I got it for Christmas and then watched it till it practically fell apart. So I got, I'm very used to how the film, did look. And, even though Lowry didn't do too much on it when they did the Ultimate Edition DVD and the Blu-ray, I'm still like, this should look a lot better. So I always watch that copy. It is a fantastic disc. And I love that it uses the original poster artwork on the front, which is sort of reprising the posing of Roger Moore from the Live and Let Die one sheet. And so I always loved that because I loved the Live and Let Die poster. So it's really cool that they did that. It has a nice gatefold. So that's definitely the best Laserdisc version out there. So congrats on finding one. Um, nice night for a walk. Yeah. uh, yeah, Laserdisc powers are Laserdisc powers. Wow, Laserdisc players are more powerful than VCRs. Yeah, because you got to think about it. It's got to spin a Laserdisc at a ostensibly insane speed to get up to where the laser can be able to read things properly. So if you ever have something going and you're working on a player and you have to put in a test disc and you've got the top off and you just start it spinning, it's just like, man, these things have some real machinery in there. No wonder they're so heavy. um, yeah, I've got the CAV twister. I think that one you might as well just go for the CAV because it's one of those awesome full CAV common discs that sometimes you don't even realize you have the CAV because it's just that little bar on the top. But Twister is a common disc, and you can get the CAV for nothing, so you might as well. I don't have the CLV, so I don't know if the CAV is like a giant leap over the CLV one, but with it being that cheap, I just figured I'm just going to grab a CAV one when I find one. I've got. I don't have the Blu-ray. I know there's a lot of people who talk about the different releases and the sound mix and how that fares, like the AC3 and the Laserdisc, the DVD having Dolby and DTS, the Blu-ray, and then I think the European Blu-ray is a different encode or something. So there's technically 5 sound mixes of Twister people talk about. I only have the CAV LD, and then I did pick up, I don't know if it's over here, but I did pick up the Snapper Case DVD again at cheap at one of the stores because it has one of those full bitrate DTS DVD tracks. So if you're curious about Twister and DTS, even though it didn't happen on Laserdisc, you can actually pick up that first Snapper Case DVD and get the full bitrate of DTS that would have been on Laserdisc, but on DVD, if you're really diehard on Twister or curious. Well, Pete, I can't say for sure because I don't want to just claim I remember exactly what a film print looks like a bunch of years ago, but I remember it looked great. The only thing I do remember um, is primarily in like some of the spaceship scenes where you have the white halls and floors and stuff where you could see just like a tiny bit of grain. And even though I was much younger, I always have loved film grain and it being visible. So I did notice that, and I thought that was kind of cool. So that's the only thing I really remember specifically. But it was like very, very tiny. So it was very, very fun. But other than that, I'd have to actually see it again to be able to tell you more or anything specific. Ah, Metro, I got it a lot. Okay, gonna have a few doubles. Yeah. Oh man. Sometimes doubles are good, and then sometimes you need doubles of the same film because you have problems. um, yeah, I just hadn't. It's one of those. I've got a couple Pixar's on Blu-ray. It's just I haven't picked up Wally yet. I try to get them at decent prices, but unfortunately, Pixar and Disney titles still seem to have a pretty decent price markup even on the used market. So I try to pick them up one at a time where my wallet will allow. Oh gosh, yeah, Grave of the Fireflies is just, man, that'll, wow, first time you see Grave of the Fireflies, that will literally just hit you right in the gut and just knock you flat. And you will be an emotional puddle on the floor. Like I read Ebert's Great Movies review back when it first came out, and I'd heard the title, but I didn't really know. I knew it was animated, but I didn't know if it was Miyazaki. And of course, it isn't. But it's some of the other guys who were working at the same time. And then when I finally did see it, I was like, that piece did not indicate the depths of emotion in this thing. Like it will just it's one of those films that one of those very rare films that will just reduce even grown men to just like puddles of tears. I mean that you could call it one of the great war films, one of the great anti-war films, one of the great animated films, one of the great anything. That is just a work of art. Um, and I don't know if they're ever going to do it in 4K or something. I think maybe there's been some rumors about it, but the redone. I think it came out on Blu-ray somewhere overseas first, but the current Blu-ray is pretty darn good. Um, Actually, speaking of that, I saw somebody's got a print of it on eBay right now. It's in Russia. If you're a print collector, you can buy a print of Grave of the Fireflies, but it's a little worn and the audio is in Russian, of course. But I was like, wow, I don't think I've ever seen one of these before. When I saw it theatrically, it was just a DCP of the Blu-ray, but yeah, so that if you've never seen Grave of the Fireflies, it is fantastic. You should see it, but it's very, very emotional. So don't watch it expecting, a Disney movie or Sunshine and Rainbows because it is none of those. It is pretty straight up darn serious and very poetic, really, but man, it is sad. Oh yeah, yeah. Metro was suffering through the early CBS Fox releases of Bond on Laserdisc and enjoying firsthand how most of them are horribly time compressed. The transfers are actually pretty good, even though for the scope films they're pan and scan. And they're pretty sharp, but man, the time compression is just a killer on those. Um, so yeah, you really need to go for the letterbox bonds all the way because going anything prior to that, you're going to run into issues or that awful time compression. Um, and honestly, all the letterbox transfers are pretty good, even though some are on the lesser side of letterbox MGMUA transfers of the late 80s. Oh man, Metro is a fan of Lulu's Golden Gun theme song. Oh wow, I'm glad to finally meet another fan. Usually that gets kind of slogged off with it's called one of the lesser themes. But I gotta say, I've always really liked it. I like especially the dramatic opening and ending, and the way it's just like a hard cut right into Bond coming into M's office. And I know some people talk about the Alice Cooper song that was rejected that eventually ended up on the Muscle of Love album, but yeah, I just don't think it would have fit in the same way. It's kind of got that same gritty, almost slightly raunchiness to it. But I think the Lulu song really does work. I think the score is underrated. I know Barry didn't have a lot of time to record it, so he always felt it wasn't as good as he could do, but there's just beautiful stuff in that score. And I do think the song is underrated. I can understand why people don't maybe like it as much. It's probably the most. I'd probably say the reason why people don't like it as much is if you had to say any of the 70s themes were maybe a bit dated, I'd say maybe that one is a tad because it's sort of following in the thematics of Diamonds Are Forever, the theme song, with the same sort of level of raunchiness and the getting a strong singer to perform it. Like you can see, it's trying to be like Diamonds Are Forever, the song. But that's me like splitting hairs trying to figure out why people wouldn't like it because it's awesome. But man, the whole score is fantastic, and I would recommend if you do really like the song and score, if you can get I don't know if you're into vinyl at all, but the original UA soundtrack LP is actually really good, but you got to find a clean copy. I had to go through at least a couple before I got one that wasn't just tons of noise, and that will ruin Scaramanga's Funhouse for sure. But it sounds really good. The CD is also pretty good, but it's one of those where they've never expanded it, so it only really sounds, pretty decent. So the original soundtrack LP is still my go-to, and it sounds great. I've never gotten. I would like to one day get all of the 45s for the theme songs, just for to have like some of the single mixes and see if there's like a hot 45 mix or something. But yeah, those I haven't gotten into that yet. But yeah, I really love Lulu's song. I do. I really do. And I kind of hate that it kind of just gets ignored. And I also love Binder's title sequence with the naked ladies underwater, and you have the rippling effects, and then the rippling effects over the golden gun when the title comes up, and the lily pads, and it's all kind of like smoky and dark looking. I really think it's a good title sequence too, and of course the whole film just gets totally torn apart and ignored, and people just complain that it's dated or super 70s and stuff. But yeah, I love the song. Glad to finally meet another fan. Uh, Try and catch up. Let's see. HD DVD is bogus. Well, I mean, it's technically bogus now, and if you have a Warner disc that isn't rotted, then man, you really won the rot lottery. Because those have so much rot issues that it starts to make a DADC pressed Laserdisc look good, which is saying something. Hope I get the CLB version of Twister. I don't know. I have too many discs to begin with, but maybe I guess if I spot a super cheap one, I can just pick it up to compare, just to see if there's any real difference between that and the CAV. Yeah, Pete, I did check out some of the Criterion Midnight Cowboy. It is, being an older Laserdisc, it is a bit softer, and I don't think the color's like 100% spot on, but it doesn't look anything like the Criterion Blu-ray, I can tell you that. None of the other versions do. So yeah, and of course Criterion got that master from MGM, and then whoever MGM had do it, that's where I think the teal came into play. Bull Durham is the same way, of course, and then they just had In the Heat of the Night, which was a brand new scan and from MGM, and that one's fine. So I don't know what happened, but yeah, if you look at those three cases, two have teal all over them, and then the next one from all the same players has none of it. And yeah, the Criterion Laserdisc up in that Cowboy looks nothing like the Criterion Blu-ray. It's I have the I don't have the first MGM Blu-ray, but I do have the collector's edition DVD, which has the same master, and it looks rather close to that. So yeah, I think the what Criterion put out, like that master, it's just got teal all over it. It's not supposed to be there. Like that one, I don't even think people. I don't even think it's really up for debate, because I saw just the screen captures, and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't look too good. I haven't even blown that up yet, and man, that looks pretty obvious. Yeah, Metro, there are a number of HD DVDs that actually have better encodes. Like a lot of Universal discs, I found out. The Mission Impossibles, Casino apparently as well. And when they got put out on Blu-ray later on, they used the HD DVD encodes. But even though Blu-ray can hold more, they re-encoded them, so the encodes weren't as good. And then there were some that had lossless audio on HD DVD, but then got lossy audio on Blu-ray. So there were actually a number of titles that you had to have HD DVD to actually have a better presentation than Blu-ray, which makes no real sense, but that's how it happened. I never actually have one. I don't think I ever have played one or used one. I've, I have Blu-rays with, older codecs and things, but I've never had an HD DVD. I've nearly bought one out of curiosity because you see them pop up in like used bins and stuff, but there's nothing specifically that I need. And trying to find a working player now is pretty difficult. And I'm like, well, I don't know. You need to go sink a bunch of money into an HD DVD player. There's nothing really I need on that format, but when it works, it's pretty decent. So I don't think it's anything to sneeze at or anything. But my thing was I just couldn't understand why people would go with HD DVD over Blu-ray because um, Blu-ray was simply technically better in various other fields, primarily in data capacity. That was my thing because I remember when everybody's talking about the format wars and it was all over the news. I just read the specs and I'm like, well, how could you go with HD DVD when you're going to run into storage limits, whereas a Blu-ray has significantly more, and there's better codecs for it. So that's why I was kind of like, well, I think Blu-ray is going to win out because it technically it's better in a number of different fields. But then you had all the studios going from side to side, and then eventually everybody went over to Blu-ray, and that was the demise of HD DVD. But yeah, I think outside of the Warner Brothers Rod issue, because I guess they used a particular plant or something, they're actually pretty good for what they are, I think. Yeah, if he was talking less storage, yeah, that's the thing. I think that, and I think some of the codecs were a little bit more complicated in how they worked. Like, um, there was Dolby Digital Plus audio, and then that turned into True HD at the end, and then that made it over to Blu-ray, and and then you had the space limits, and then a lot of discs were designed around that, and then HD DVD died and then they were stuck on Blu-ray, but with those same space limits of HD DVD, and we were stuck with that for years. Still are with some titles. The Kubrick Blu-rays were that way because they were designed for HD DVD. The first Blade Runner Blu-rays were designed around HD DVD, and thus had tons of wasted space on Blu-ray. Wild Bunch was designed around HD DVD, even so. That's how old that Blu-ray is. So that really needs an upgrade. Oh wow, got a bunch of stuff. Let's see. Shrek 3 had HD DVD. It was rotted, and I smashed it to pieces. Wow. Oh man, either you really hated Shrek 3 or you were really frustrated that you couldn't finish Shrek 3. I don't know. I've never really seen Shrek 3, so I can't tell you either way. Oh man, I don't like if he doesn't like Volcano because the subway train scene is terrifying. Oh man. Yeah, I really want. I've never actually seen Volcano. I would like to finally see it. I've of course never gotten the Laserdisc because I know it's like one of the notorious rotters. So yeah, I need to just do a double feature of Volcano and Dante's Peak one night just to do a Volcano Battle of '97 double feature. Wouldn't that be great if you could actually see double features like that in theaters? Uh, but yeah, I always loved looking at films that came out almost head to head with similar topics, kind of back to back and doing comparisons. I know Volcano is not supposed to be that great, but I think I've seen pieces of it on cable over the years, of course. But I need to finally sit down and put it in Dante's Peak head to head. Okay, Metro would like to watch it over Twister. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I liked Twister here and there, but I don't really watch it that often because when you can ostensibly have tornadoes come through in real life, you don't really want to watch a movie about tornadoes. Tornadoes now do you. um, Still, I think it would have been really weird to have been in the drive-in theater watching Twister and have a tornado come through. That's like just asking for it. Um, let's see. A-Track likes the Japanese version of Grave of the Fireflies. I guess the well, I mean, I guess there's Japanese Laserdisc, but I guess the Japanese Blu-ray maybe as well. I don't know. I don't think there's like a, because I know there's like a lot of Japanese versions of films of that era, but I don't think there's like a different cut of it or something. Um, Shrek 3 was great. Okay, maybe I should finally see Shrek 3 then. Yeah, CBS Fox did have good artwork. Like, even when they weren't using original posters, they would just use stills. Like, I do have a couple because I try to get the ones that at least have digital sound. Like, I got the one for Young Mr. Lincoln. And it's got a great still of Henry Fonda and the Lincoln makeup they had on him there, and it's just a simple still of him like standing on a front porch, but it just looks gorgeous on the jacket. And then you just have the classic CBS Fox blue bar at the bottom. But yeah, they did do good even on their early covers, I gotta say. Um, Yeah, Toy Story 1 and 2 on 4K if they've been transferred from film. Yeah, I know Toy Story 1, only the Laserdisc is a film transfer, and that's why I want to get the CAV box, but all the others they went back to digital files. But then I think at some point they lost some sort of digital file. I don't know if it was like the master one or something, but I remember reading that either something got corrupted or got lost. Um, yeah, I don't know what a straight film scan for those would be like. I don't know if they're able to achieve more out of that than the source resolution files. I don't know if, I mean, if it were me, I would have just taken a look at both just to see the difference. Um, if I were making them, I would have put a disc of each on there just because I'm that big of a nerd. Um, and I would actually like to see a film-based version of both of those. I think it'd be pretty cool. Um, but it's probably just going to be, coloring things a bit with just some film grain and stuff. Um, oh wow, what print would I love to have more than anything else in passable condition? Oh geez, wow, getting right to the hard questions, aren't we? Well, I guess because I've always wanted to collect prints, but I've never had the means or the finances to do so, let alone an actual vault to store things. But things do seem to kind of be getting easier to do these days across the board with the advent of the internet. So uh, I guess. Oh, okay. Pete's gonna be heading off for a bit. Okay, I'll try to hurry up and answer this then for you before you have to head out. I mean, it would have to be one of the bonds. It would have to be like a pristine dye transfer Technicolor print of something, and that, of course, only ran up into the early '70s. Of course, I'd love to have the first three Batmans, or a lot of films I grew up with. But it would have to be one of the bonds, or the original Star Wars trilogy, of course. Um, but yeah, push comes to shove, it would have to be one of the early Bonds, probably Live and Let Die most of all, because that's my favorite film. I would love to see a Technicolor print of Live and Let Die. I really would. So yeah, that would probably be it, because that's my favorite film. To give you a short answer, if it was a long answer, I'd have to get into 70 millimeter, and everybody wants a print of Lawrence, don't they? Or is that just me? Even though Robert Harris says the 4K is like better than any film projection he's ever even seen of his own restoration, and he'd take the 4K any day over 70 millimeter Lawrence, and I'm like, no. Well, I get where he's coming from, but I'm like, no. So yeah, definitely, Pete. Take all the time you need. I'll probably still be droning on or something. Um, Yeah, just go with Dante's Peak. It's got the Pierce of the Brosnan. Yeah, automatic win. Although Volcano has Tommy Lee Jones, I guess it's the uh, what would that be? What would be the closest? I mean, you could just say the Two-Face Bond battle. Um, but yeah, that would be the marquee name she had to put against each other. Um, okay, yeah, Metro picked up a CBS Fox of the immortal art house classic Porky's Revenge. Oh man, I I don't even know if I've seen any of the sequels. Like I think I've seen the first Porky's. I saw it on cable at some point because I remember I've seen it somewhere. But yeah, like all those vintage CBS boxes are actually pretty cool. And they did seem to start adding in digital sound relatively early because I didn't even realize this, but like they even had it by the late '80s before they were doing, straight across letterbox on all their titles. So they seemed to kind of get on board with having PCM before a lot of the other studios, which is pretty good because so many stuck with analog only for so long. And analog works and it's fine all, but it can get really noisy on certain discs. And I am super huge on the digital soundtrack. So if I know there's a Laserdisc out there with digital sound, I will wait for that one. If I can go without having to be forced to listen to the analog, even if it's harder to find, I'm gonna wait for the one with digital sound. Oh, I forgot. I didn't finish. I think that's what happens. I just have a couple 12-inch singles. Now these are pretty cool because two of them are UK ones and just stuff I had not expected to find locally. But I love, I guess I sort of talked about this some last time. I love 12-inch UK singles because they're almost always at 45 speed. So you get the better sound fidelity of having the, you know, um, greater depth and having the um, having more space and everything for your groups. So they had the UK 12-inch of the Clash's Rock the Casbah, backed with Mustafa Dance, which is sort of like a extended riff on the main riff of the song. But this is the original UK 12-inch at 45 speed. Sounds phenomenal. And of course, from the Combat Rock album, which I also have the UK pressing of, which is probably the best one out there. Although the US pressing of Combat Rock is really, really good. And when I got the UK, I compared them, and I just think the UK one is slightly better. But I'm trying to get all the Clash UK singles, but it's very hard and expensive to get all of the 7 inches of the earlier ones because they had a lot of songs and famous songs that are, of course, not on any albums, like White Men and Hammersmith Palais and a lot of others that are, of course, only on the single, so they cost a lot. Another UK 12-inch I've been meaning to pick up for my collection. I've been trying to collect all the Duran Duran 12-inch UK singles because they very famously had a lot of exclusive B-sides and stuff back in the day. And a lot of people would try and import all the ones back when Duran was huge in the early 80s. So, but all the 12 inches from the first two albums have phenomenal sound quality, as do the songs on those albums. But I've been missing this one. This is the 12-inch of Careless Memories, backed with a B-side of a cover of Bowie's Fame and another B-side, Canada. I may be pronouncing that wrong because it's got some strange spelling and stuff. But yeah, it's got the similar art design to the first album and the other singles from the first album, but also at 45 speed. And their 12 inches from the first two albums sound amazing. Like, really, really phenomenal sound quality on these. So that was one I'd been missing. And then the last one, the last of all my random box of pickups, is something I've been meaning to pick up for a while, but I finally found the Springsteen Dancing in the Dark 12-inch with the extended mixes on it. And I just always loved this cover shot. It's like the perfect bit of goofiness and just a great 12-inch single sleeve. So it's got I think it's like it's a 6-minute extended mix on one side and then some dub mixes on the other side, and just a really nice sound on 12-inch. So that is all my box of random pickups done finally. That way I didn't forget anything. Pierce Brosnan voiced over for Thomas the Tank Engine versus Tommy Lee Jones, the man who made Jim Carrey sad. Tommy Lee Jones, the man who could not sanction Jim Carrey's buffoonery. I still remember that. I was like, how have I been such a big fan of Batman Forever all these years and not known that? That's such a great line. I cannot sanction your buffoonery. I hate you. Like, who says that? Like, he must have gotten really annoyed, like, on a long period of time. come up with something like that. But yeah. So let me see. I'm trying to think what I was going to say. Um, I don't know. Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, UK 45 12 inches. They are really awesome. And yeah, that was one of the Duran 12s I've been missing. I have a good number of the 80s ones. I just wanted to get through like the pretty much through the 80s to get all of the big singles and all their extended mixes and stuff. But man, the sound quality on a lot of this is fantastic. By the time you get to the early 90s around the Wedding album, that's when they get like really hard to find because vinyl had pretty much died out. Um, but oh wow, you have the Seven of the Ragged Tiger MoFi. Man, I know that is like super rare because that's one of the earlier MoFis, and of course is long out of print. I did hear a needle drop of that once, which sounds pretty good. Um, I've got a bunch of different pressings of that album because that one, I was never as big of a fan of the sonic direction they went on it. Something about the production, it's like I went through so many different copies trying to find one that I really like the sound of. But yeah, that's like, gosh, I've got the two cuttings of the American one, the one that Wally Troggett did and the one that Ted Jensen did. I've got the UK original and I've got the Japanese and I have the standard CD. So I've got 5 versions. Whereas the first 2 albums, like the original British and Japanese ones, are great, and you don't have to look any further. But with that one, for some reason, like I've tried so many different ones. I don't know. Maybe I have to eventually find the MoFi if I can ever afford one. But yeah, oh man, I could. I was actually just talking about this over on the Hoffman forums. There's a big ongoing Duran Duran song by song thread, and we were just talking about the Seven and the Ragged Tiger era, and I was going on about how I've gone through all these different copies of that one album, trying to see if one sounded any better, or if they all kind of sounded the same. Uh, Oh yeah, yeah. Original press of the Wedding album is not cheap, and I gotta say it's actually kind of ironic because that one they primarily recorded on, I think it was DAT tape. So it's the CD is already great. You can get it for like a buck or two. It's got plenty of dynamics and is pretty much the resolution they were recording at. So people throw in like $200-300 at the vinyl pressing. It's like, well, I mean, you're not going to get much more out of that. So, like that's one of those where, yeah, I'd love to have the vinyl version one day. But if you have the original CD, it's you're pretty good. Um, but even the 12 inches from that album are expensive. That's why I've never gotten any. The latest one I have is the one for Sirius, which is pretty hard to find because that was for the Liberty album in 1990. But I got it at a decent price, and it actually sounds pretty good. But again, that was where they were recording partially digitally at least, and so the version on CD is also pretty equivalent to the vinyl version. But yeah, the early 12 inches, especially for the first 2 albums, man, they will. I use a lot of stuff. My 12 inches and my copies of the first 2 albums are easy demo material. If I ever have to demo system or if people ask me to put on a good sounding record, that's some of the stuff I go for because they sound phenomenal. Um, I think the Japanese Rio is probably one of the best sounding LPs I've ever heard. It's that good. So yeah, I cannot recommend those highly enough. Um, Tommy Lee Jones is one of those great actors I don't want to meet. Yeah, I don't know. I guess you'd have to catch him on a good day, otherwise you get the stare. Or you get grumpy Lee Jones or something. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess you have to catch him at the right time and not be too weird. But maybe if you caught him on a good day and um, I don't know. He doesn't seem to pop up in all that much very very often. I mean, I still enjoy him in anything, but I kind of would like to see more of him, but I don't know what he's really doing. That being said, the picture he directed, Three Burials of, oh shoot, I always mispronounce this. I'm totally gonna butcher this, but Three Burials of it's a Mexican term. I can't even pronounce it. I don't know how you pronounce it, but okay, I'm just gonna say Three Burials to make sure that I'm not mispronouncing it. But it's actually a pretty good dark film. It's sort of like No Country for Old Men, but before that was ever a thing, and it's also like a quasi modern western. But I've been wanting to see it on Blu-ray for years, and it never came out. Um, but I think Sony's finally going to put it out here in the States. It was out in Europe for a while, but that's actually a pretty good film, and I was happy to see that he directed it. So I was wondering if maybe he's going to be directing more or something. I don't know if he's going to retire or something, but yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it'd be nice to have those super rare early '90s vinyl releases of stuff sometime. I have to say, the one Duran album I would love to have on vinyl that's rare is the Astronaut album because the CD is, I mean, the stereo mix is good, but it's so compressed with loudness that it's not fun to listen to. And then there was an SACD with 5.1 that wasn't good and is expensive and out of print. And then I found out, years later, there was like a limited vinyl release that they only did one pressing of. And I've only seen one copy in a store and they wanted $100 for it. And I'm like, that's kind of silly, but somebody bought it and I've never seen another one, so I'd love to find it, but I don't know if the pressing quality is any good because if it's an obscure pressing from like 2004, then chances are it's probably going to be a very crummy final pressing. Um, yeah, like we were talking about good films while I have RoboCop 3 on Laserdisc in the background. Well, I mean, if you feel like you got to have background noise, I guess that's fun, I don't know. I didn't expect to have RoboCop 3 to be my soundtrack, but I'll go with it. Yeah, it'd be like standing at a podium and putting on a high and mighty voice and being like, "We're going to talk about Jean Cocteau today, and then we're going to have a seminar about the late works of Francois Truffaut." And next door there's a kids matinee of Shrek 3 or something. Pull from earlier in the conversation. But yeah, hey, sometimes something just plain works. Even if it's goofy, low budget, stupid, whatever. Sometimes it just plain works, and I'll be the first to admit that. I'll also be the first to admit when something really irritates me. Because it's like underbaked or underdeveloped or acts like the audience is stupid, and it's like no, no, I'm not doing this. Um, gosh, starting to kind of run out of gas here. My throat is super dry. Ah, Metro finally watched Skyfall and now knows what I mean. Oh wow. Um, which point? Gosh, I could go into a whole like lecture on. Oh man, I could talk about my reaction to Skyfall for ages. Which thing? The whole. It seems like they had some uh, Dark Knight story structure in there because that gosh, that jumped out to me in the theater. I'm like, when they went up to Silva and he was in prison, and it was totally like, okay, so they've dressed him like Hannibal Lecter, but he's totally Dark Knight Joker here. Like, wait, what are we? Oh man, this feels like the Dark Knight. um, Yes, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not horrible, but yeah, it's not a Bond film. And then people say it's the best Bond film, and it's like, well, it's like, how many, have you ever seen a Bond film? Have you ever read a Bond novel? Because it's not the character, it's not the series iconography. It's its own thing. It would be like you could just put the new on it, like instead of new metal, it's new Bond in new Bond. If you wanted to call it anything, it's not a Bond film. It just isn't. Um, and it has such a different tone to it because they got Sam Mendes to direct it. They got new writers on, and I think people responded to the difference in tone and the occasional flashes of humor, but yeah, I remember seeing it in the theater opening week with the audiences, and it was mostly quiet in the theater, and then everybody's coming out, and it's like this isn't really what people are expecting when they come in for a Bond film. It's really not. And even if it gets great reviews, I'm like, yeah, that's fine, but that's up there in the reviews. Like in the actual, the audience is coming out of regular theaters. It's like, this isn't what people are wanting, really. I don't think. Like, it's not just me like absolutely despising this picture, but it's like the feeling is not there. It's not, parents would always, like usually one parent would sneak their kids with them to a Bond film, like dads would take their sons, and it was kind of like a thing, even though they're not films for children. Children can see and latch on to things. But these are you can't do that, and it has none of the series iconography, no connection to the original character, and just yeah, no, I can understand you liking Die Another Day more. I totally can, because I'll go ahead and say it. It's a better picture. It is. I have a lot of problems with it. It makes me wince a lot of times every year when I rewatch it. But you know, Bond is a character in the film. He's not in the new films because they threw away the character. It's just a dude who occasionally wears a tuxedo and pouts a lot, and is the worst excuse for an intelligence agent that has ever even gone through training. you know? Um, yeah, I think that with Avtac and Golden Gun, it's always everybody will pick one to just hate on for a while. It usually fluctuates. When I was growing up, it seemed to bounce back and forth between Golden Gun and Moonraker. I remember reading uh, Stephen Rubin's James Bond movie encyclopedia was my childhood Bible, and it had little mini reviews for each of the films, and it had tiny little ratings next to each one. And he was pretty open. Even though he wrote a whole book about Bond, he could acknowledge them having flaws. But for Man with the Golden Gun, he just went all out and literally said this film is a turkey. And that was when I was a kid that I had to actually figure out what that meant, because it was the first time I had referred to a film being, so bad it was referred to as being just a turkey, being a complete, failure. And I'm like, what? This is great. What are you talking about? Um, yeah, and it seems to fluctuate between, still to this day, Moonraker, Golden Gun, and Avtac. Everybody complains about Avtac because they say Roger Moore was too old. Well, it's not that, because if you look at it, yeah, they have to use a lot of stuntmen, but Roger still throws himself into it and gives a good performance. I'd argue, if anything, what makes him look older is the fact that in between films he had a bit of plastic surgery, and that's why he doesn't have his trademark mole, and he looks a bit different. And honestly, it looks a bit weird. That's why he suddenly looks older, ostensibly. And most people aren't going to take that long to think about, well, why does he look different? That's what the difference is. Other than that, yes, it's an attempt to kind of rework the Goldfinger formula in terms of plot, but it's got a really dark tone that's emerging. The villain is phenomenal. Roger still gives a great performance. Got a lot of great moments in it, but it's not anything earth shattering. And I think that's what people were starting to respond to, even if they didn't realize it. Like, the stakes were not gigantic, but I mean, technically they were, because, all of Silicon Valley was going to be destroyed, and Zoran was a complete psychotic, which were elements that were new to the series. So, there's a lot of great stuff in these films, but I think the biggest problem is that they've never been taken seriously. They've never been taken seriously as art, or they're just viewed as typical entertainment. And I think that has caused them to just not be well regarded in any realm, which is ridiculous. Um, and people want to complain about Man with the Golden Gun because they're reacting to the fact that it's a pure product of its times. Yeah, it does have some stuff that's a bit too goofy, but it was also suffering because the box office returns were lowering, and the Broccoli Saltzman partnership was at the point of completely breaking up, because at that point, for the past couple of films, they had been switching off. They had got to the point where they couldn't deal with one another, so each one would produce one film at a time and switch back and forth. So that's why the tonalities of each film would change, almost like you were flipping a switch. And that started on You Only Live Twice. And then Man with the Golden Gun, Cubby Broccoli was producing, and then that's when Harry basically had to sell his shares and wound up selling them to United Artists instead of Cubby Broccoli, which is what then tied Bond to a studio. Um, and so then after, Man with the Golden Gun came out, it was not received well. And so you got to also understand the sort of pit they were in at the time. But that being said, it's got some of Tom Mankiewicz's best lines. It has diabolically funny lines in it. Roger gives a phenomenal performance because Bond is pissed off throughout the whole movie, because he's basically, at the start of it, he's ostensibly being a hunted man, and he does not like that. So, it's got a darkness to it. It's got a very 70s raunchiness to it. Not everybody's going to like that. And I think it could do with a bit of trimming Goodnight the buffoon character, but they do give her some funny bits and lines, and then it's got some really great, beautiful moments of grandeur. Like Christopher Lee is phenomenal. Hervé Villechaize is phenomenal. It's got creativity in it, so I don't think you can hate any of them, but people will because they don't take them seriously. Um, yeah, yeah, but then again, Connery does look remarkably good in Never Say Never Again. For a long while when I was growing up, I thought he looked better in that film than he did in Diamonds Are Forever. But I think that was more of how they did his hair and toupee different in that film, because he had just come back for the one, so I kind of got used to it eventually. But yeah, I mean they did a remarkable job, and they also got him a $52,000 toupee, so that's got to help, right? Uh, oh yeah, that killed Roger, especially since he would always talk about it. He was like, "Yeah, the two things I didn't like was I didn't like roughing up Maud Adams in the hotel room, and I can't believe that I pushed the kid off the boat, and I've done all this work for UNICEF all these years. What was I thinking?" Oh, yeah, it is. It's one of those weird moments. Like I never thought about it as a kid, and then it's like the "fetch my shoes" line in Doctor No that everybody talks about now as being ostensibly a racist line, when it's a throwaway line that is not meant to be anything taken in any regard that way. And I never noticed it until somebody brought it up once, and now every time I watch the film, I have to stop and go, okay, no, yeah, I thought so. I wasn't meant to say anything. Um, but yeah, they did give the kid a great the great retort when he's in the water and he's like bloody tourist. Uh, so at least they give the humor to cut back on the fact that he just knocked the kid back off into the water. Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I knew they had alternated films at least for Live and Let Die and Golden Gun, but until I read the Some Kind of Hero book, which I cannot recommend highly enough. It's the best book for going behind the scenes on the original series. That actually revealed that it goes back further. So it started on the You Only Live Twice. So on Yolt, Cubby Broccoli produced that one. Harry produced OHMSS. Cubby produced Diamonds Are Forever. Harry produced Live and Let Die. And then Cubby produced Golden Gun. And once you understand that, it makes a lot of sense, because it's like we flip back and forth between big scope and grandeur and not so much focus on story to lots of focus on story, not necessarily the biggest scope. And I always loved Live and Let Die, but I could always tell, even though it was the same production team, there was a difference going to Man with the Golden Gun, even though it was the very next film. And it makes a lot of sense once you understand that. Like you can totally get that. And I still think when Harry left, that did remove a lot of the original spark. I think it's amazing that Cubby was able to continue, but there is a difference in the later films. Like they always said Harry would have 1,000 bad ideas, but for every 1,000 bad ideas, he would have 3 legendary, amazing ideas that nobody would have ever come up with. So, he probably wasn't the easiest person to work with, but he came up with, brilliant stuff nobody else would have. And I do think he is a sorely underrated contribution to the success of the original series. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense once you really read into the production of each, and just looking at each of their sensibilities and how that affects each of the films. And like I said, it's literally like flipping a switch back and forth for that whole period. Like the tone of each film like goes back and forth. It's kind of funny, but yeah, it totally fits. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's not suicide. Yeah, yeah. In the '70s, you could push a kid off a boat. Uh, yeah, yeah. That really drove Roger Moore crazy. Yeah. I do all this work for UNICEF, and I pushed a kid off a boat. Uh, I'm a terrible person. Let's see. Gotta get some more water here. I'm just glad I bought a jug with me. You'd be amazed how parched you get at doing one of these. Yeah, rewatch and pay attention. Yeah. Now, if you listen to any of the commentaries, especially the one Roger did, because he did one for each of his films, when he gets to that part, oh man, he's like, oh no, here we go. Knighted for work for UNICEF for all these years, so many things done. And look, I just pushed this poor child back into the dirty water. I never even really thought about it until I heard him say that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. Most people just talk about the hotel scene, but that being said, his life is being threatened, and yeah, he has to get this information, and he's a little bit pissed off for having to go all this way and being pulled off of his assignment to figure out where this guy is, who nobody knows what he looks like or anything about him, and the world's greatest assassin is supposed to kill him, so he's also working against the clock. um, so there is a reason for it, and that's why Guy Hamilton was able to get Roger to do it. But people don't give enough credit to the fact that it's not unwarranted, and it's not like um, I guess it was just because everybody expects Roger to be a certain way. And you're right, critics were extremely wrong about his tenure because they've never taken these films seriously, and they still don't. Um, yes, they'll say the early films are good, but they won't talk about them being artistic triumphs, even though they are. They'll just say, "Oh, it's a great classic film of the '60s," and that's it. And Sean's great. And I'm like, well, aren't you going to talk about why? It's like there were directors for these films, there were editors, there were set designers, there were producers, uh, but yeah, and that is a well performed scene, that in the hotel room. And again, as dark as it is, it has some of Tom Mankiewicz's best one liners. Like the one of the best one liners in the whole film and in the whole series period is when he asks for description and Andrea's stuck for an answer, and then gives uh finally says, well, he has three. It's also the most useless piece of information you could have given me, unless the bottom's up is a strip club and Scaramanga's performing there tonight. It's like, it's so great, it takes a second to sink in, and then you're just like laughing your head off. The same thing with I'm now aiming precisely at your groin, so speak now or forever hold your peace. It's like, it's just beautiful. You would kill to write a line like that. And it's also got this wonderful dark tinge to it. The whole film is actually quite dark, and sort of a nasty way too. It's not quite gritty like an early '70s film, and yeah, it's kind of raunchy, but it's also really dark in a way that they had never been before. And I don't know if that was, reflecting on the partnership falling apart or just people's moods at the time, but you can't deny it's a film with a lot of dark undercurrent to it. It's hard to Petra says it's hard for him to take Odd Job seriously. Uh Well, I could say maybe if you played GoldenEye 64 growing up, always with DK mode on, so everybody was running around with big heads, and then you had the one friend who always picked odd jobs, so you couldn't hit him, and they were the cheat player. Um, Harold that wow, Harold Sakata has that wonderful face he makes, that sort of semi smile, and then he just like will chop the guy, chop Bond on the back. Um, but no, I've never had that problem. I just I don't know how you go about casting those roles. Period. Like you think about the classic films, like how amazing it was that they were able to find people to perfectly embody those characters. Because if you read the novel, Oddjob is actually quite forbidding and kind of frightening in a lot of ways. And you don't think anybody could ever physically embody that. And Harold Sakata was just amazing. And again, Guy Hamilton just found it by accident saying wrestling on television, but he recognized that forbidding presence he could have, coming towards the camera in the wrestling ring. And that's another example of Guy Hamilton bringing so many different, interesting new ideas to the series. And even though I prefer the Terrence Young style, you can't deny all of the just inspired ideas that came out of Guy Hamilton. And even in the films he made with Roger that are underrated and not taken seriously. Um, yeah, but see, that's the thing. Yeah, even if you get a gold bar thrown at your chest, it's the same thing. Sean had a lot of problems. He's like, no one can crush a golf ball in their hands. That's stupid. And then guy had to tell him, yes, I know it's ridiculous, but if this guy can crush golf balls with his bare hand, you're gonna fight him at some point, and the audience knows, well, how can he beat this guy? This guy can crush golf balls with his bare hands. So you're gonna have a real tough time, and it builds up suspense. Well, I still don't think he can crush golf balls with his hands. That's stupid. But yeah, it's like just enough, to because ostensibly there really could be a guy like that. I mean, I don't know what you'd have to do, but the novel goes into great detail about instead of just having the hat cutting off the statue head, Goldfinger has Oddjob demonstrate to Bond in the novel and have Oddjob show Bond his hands with all the thick calluses all over his fingers and the flat of his hand and stuff. And it's much more visceral, the fact that Bond reflects on how this man has basically become a living, breathing weapon. Like, and he knows how to kill a man in like all these different ways with one blow. And so I think they were able to translate that very, very well without, wasting a lot of screen time. Um, oh yeah, I mean, you can't even compare the new films. The new films, it's like, especially for villains, they've already wasted two of the classic characters, the Chief and Blofeld. And the fact that they basically borrowed the Gold Member plot to finally bring Blofeld back after all these years, finally getting the rights, and they're just going to borrow the bit from Gold Member where they're basically related. And I'm like, oh my god, you've got to be kidding! I am the author of all of your pain. Oh, oh man, I'm still pissed about that. That was so bad. Oh, in a lot of ways, I dislike Spectre even more than I dislike Casino Royale. But yeah, that takes a lot for me to say that. But man, that was just, oh man, I thought I was going to start climbing the walls of the theater, just hoping it would stop. But yeah, it's like the villains in the new films, they're like almost a non-entity. It's like they're there, and they have good actors performing the roles, but it's just like they're just performing the duty they're supposed to. They don't have any menace. Um, for example, I think Largo is one of the best villains of the original series, but on the surface, he doesn't necessarily do a whole lot. But he is extremely physical. He's the only one of the villains besides Doctor No that feasibly could, kill Connery's Bond in a hand-to-hand fight. But he exudes such menace. And it's not just the fact that he wears an eye patch and is kind of piratical looking. There's a lot of subtext there with Bond trying to assault Largo's ego in the casino and things like that, and his relationship with Domino and stuff. So he exudes menace, and he's egotistical and all this other stuff. So you really feel his presence, even though ostensibly it's not like he exactly does a whole lot. So yeah, the new villains, they don't have any presence at all. Like it's just like yeah. uh Yeah, I mean, as a standalone film, yeah, Quantum is technically the worst because they didn't have a finished script and they were having to rewrite stuff every single day, and it was a giant mess. And they should have stopped and regrouped, but they didn't have the ability to do that. That being said, of the four, it's probably the one I have the least problems with, probably because it's the shortest and the roughest, so it's at least over faster. I mean, it did have the good scene at the opera with the reveal of the hidden agents. That was a pretty good little set piece. And I did, even though I didn't like the way they did it, and I didn't like the reason, I did like the fact that Bond got drunk in one scene. Like that was something from the novels that we've never gotten. But then it's just like, oh, I'm gonna stare at a picture of Vesper. I'm so sad. And I'm like, no, that's like it was one good thing we'd never seen, and then you ruined it. And I liked what happened to Mathis, but I mean, not what happened, but like the staging of it, and then the disposal of the corpse. Like I thought that was a nice thing, but that was about it. And then it had that awful CG and the awful editing in the opening and stuff. But yeah, it's bad because of all the scripting problems and stuff. But for me, it's probably the one that I have the least problems with because there's the least in there. um, it does seem like some laser discs have increased in price, but thankfully not overall a whole lot. But yeah, finding them in a while, it's like going through periods. It always seems to be. It's like you get some here and there. Here locally, there was nothing, and then there was one massive estate sale that happened at the main store, and then everybody was just we're been picking over the same thing over and over, and then they keep getting like random new batches of like 20 discs or 30 discs at a time every 4 to 6 months, and so you just pick over whatever random new ones come in. Like sometimes there'll be three or four or five or whatever. But yeah, it's very sporadic and very random. And I think you just have to know the, hiding holes they pop up in. But yeah, I guess it would really depend on area and if there were a lot of collectors back in the day in your area, because otherwise they're not going to pop up in stores or thrift shops and stuff. But yeah, mostly, if it's something specific, you got to go to eBay or the Laserdisc database. And but the big thing is when people do big group sales on the Facebook groups, that's where you can finally find a lot of good stuff. And then you start getting too many Laserdiscs again. Yeah. You find a used bookstore or something, but yeah, it's few and far between. And then you got to go to eBay and tack on the $4 to $5 media mail shipping surcharge. Yeah. Good Squid had a twine laser disc. Yeah, you said it was pretty cheap. Yeah. They only usually go for 150, 150 at the lowest. Yeah, that's cheap. That's a steal. That's just yeah. I thought about getting twine when I found a copy for $350, but I was like, no. I feel like paying more. Yeah, yeah. That's still my white whale disc. Um, Oh, cool. Yeah, I know the Turtles discs are pretty hard to find. Um, I saw those when I was a kid, but I don't really think I've seen them since. I should probably rewatch them. I know I watched the reruns of the animated series when I was growing up. I'd like to rewatch that too, actually. Um, I mean, I'd like the Turtles as good. I was just never like, giant on them or anything. But I guess I should pick up that. I think they have Warner says that triple feature of the regular of the first three live action films on Blu-ray for pretty cheap. So I guess I should pick that up and watch through those. I'd like to have the Laserdisc, but I know they're pretty hard to find these days. Hmm. Most you ever spent on one disc? Oh yeah, yeah. I think I asked this question before. It's oh, $50 on the Japanese Suspiria. Man, I know that's got to be difficult to find. And then of course you get, I mean, it's not really an extra charge, but you know, anytime something's a foreign disc, it's probably going to cost more. Um, ooh, Japanese Ninja Turtles 3, same art as the poster. Okay, yeah, I'll definitely look that up. That's probably got to be a stunner. Most I ever spent on one is the my copy of the definitive collection. I it was one I always wanted to find, but you know, I know the deficiencies of the master, and you know, I already have one of the Faces discs. So I was like, if I come across a good one that's not expensive, then I'll pick it up. But you know, usually they're super expensive, and you know, you got to go through trying to figure out doesn't have rods, doesn't have layer welding on it, doesn't have the book, is it complete? And so one of our Facebook members on one of the groups was selling. I think he had two copies, and so I was able to ask, and it was complete, had everything, and he even let me choose which box I wanted because one was a little dinged up and one didn't have the Velcro. So I was able to get it shipped, and it was it was $50 basically, which for one of those and shipped is nothing because they can go for like $200 on eBay. But that I did that because I knew I wasn't going to be able to find one, you know, that ticked all the boxes and would be shipped well by somebody who knew what they were talking about. So that is the most I've spent on a single title. Oh my gosh, Metro! Wow, you actually got Twine. Oh man, 220, yeah. And even 220 for that is not bad because you know that can be 350, 400 or more because it's in that super exclusive late release Japan club. Um, I'd hate to think what people would pay if they got X-Men, MI2, Twine, and The Cell, and some of the others all at the same time. But yeah, that is. So that's Canadian. Okay, so it's like 170 US. That's even better. Yeah. The closest I've come was about a month ago. There was one on eBay UK, and I found it almost by accident because I have a safe search set up, and it says you might be interested in similar items, and it showed there was one in the UK, and it had like one bid on it and 2 days left. So I watched it, and I was winning right up until the last second, so I almost got one for it would have been $62, and then I would have had to pay like 25 or 30 for the shipping once you do all the rates. So it still would have been like it would have been under 100. So that would have been fantastic and amazing, but I got outbid at the very last second. Um, got the good squid hunting disc for you. Yeah. Um, he did actually have a Twine in his last sale. I asked him if it was expensive, and he's like, "Oh yeah." I guess I should ask him how much he charges for one of those. One day I've got to just go ahead because that's been the one gaping hole ever since I started collecting Laserdisc. But yeah, I wonder if he lets you pay in installments. It's like if you find a Twine disc, can I just pay in installments? Oh, okay. Metro is thinking about the Japanese Universal Soldier 2, but don't know if I want to buy off the database yet. Yeah, you know, the database is a great place, but you gotta like with any rare or import disc, you just if you have any questions, you know, check with the sellers and stuff, and you can always look at their ratings and things if you're comparing different sellers and things. But yeah, sometimes the database, certain sellers on there will still want to charge, you know, more premium pricing than what's on eBay. But then again, they usually know more of the rarity of what they have. Okay, cool. This is a good question I can answer. 4K asks, how are the Italian Blu-ray versions of Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More compared to the German releases, and which are the ones to get? Um, okay, and still want the latest version because you just picked the good, bad, and the ugly. Yeah. Um, to put it very shortly, because I could talk about this for like a solid hour. Um, so basically, I'll do one film at a time. Fistful of Dollars had a restoration back in 2007 that was done in Italy from the negative, which was really great. And it was released in Italy by Ripley's Home Video and then came out in Germany. The Italian one is not English. I think it does have the English mono, but it's lossy. But the encode is better than the German disc. However, the Italian disc is region locked and it's out of print. And the German disc is almost as good in video quality. Like it's just like a slightly lesser bit rate. And then it has lossless English mono and is region free. And then I would suggest there's a double feature Blu-ray of that German disc with with for a few dollars more. And I suggest getting that one because for a few dollars more, the German Blu-ray took the master MGM did. They dialed back some of the DNR, so it's got a little bit more dirt and speckles, but doesn't have as much of the noise reduction and edge enhancement. There's still some there because it's baked into that master. But what they did was they went out and they tracked down all of these snippets of extra footage that was in all the various other versions and actually reincorporated it into the feature. So it is the only complete version of the film on disc, period, anywhere. It does have the opening text in German. That's the only problem. So the opening text of the white on red about the, uh, death in the West, where only death has its price. That's when the bounty killers appeared. That's in German. But other than that, it's the best version of the film out there, and it does have lossless English mono. You can get the region-free double set of that for like $10 or so from Amazon Germany once you do the currency conversion, and then pay to have it shipped over. They used to be separate, but then I saw they put it in a double set, and it's region-free. It's got the same extras as the MGM disc, but they'll be in PAL. So unless you have a player that could convert those, it won't play the extras. But if you already have the MGM special editions or Blu-rays, which you can get for like $1 or $2 here, you can get all those extras here on those. But yeah, that's what I would suggest doing. For the Italian, for a few dollars more, there was an earlier one by Mondo Home Video. It's a softer transfer with kind of some more color. But that's out of print and hard to find. I've just seen screen captures of it, but it didn't have any English track on it. At least I don't think it did. And then, unfortunately, the same lovely Italian mastering house that's been doing all these restorations and did the one for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly that added all the awful teal and yellow, have done Fistful of Dollars and for a few dollars more. Kino releases those over here. The one for Fistful of Dollars is a new 4K scan. The detail's pretty good, but the color, black levels, everything are just garbage. It is a terrible disc. It's just like The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, but slightly different. So that one is just completely terrible, even though it has a nice new commentary on it. Now, Kino said they were going to supervise the For a Few Dollars More disc, and apparently they did, because it does not have the same level of problems that the other two do. But it's not exactly perfect, and the English audio is not quite in sync. It follows some of the same errors that the MGM DVDs and Blu-rays did, and it doesn't have the complete version. It doesn't have any of the additional footage. And as usual, when this was brought to Kino's attention, we got things that were not, usually you say you get a polite brush off, but they weren't really polite. And it was basically indicated that all of the additional footage was unimportant and just and they basically called the German disc a piece of crap. And that was actually the product of people who cared about the film doing research. So yeah, even though the Kino for a few dollars more, it's okay. It's watchable. It's halfway decent. You just got to be aware the English mono isn't fully in sync like it should be. It's got some of the error editing mistakes that the DVDs and Blu-rays did. So the German release is still technically better for having the complete version and having the English mono mostly in sync. Like there's been a lot of problems with the English mono being in sync since the DVD came out. So unfortunately, no release is 100% perfect. But I would say grab that German double feature disc because it is fantastic. I'd like to get the first Italian Fistful Blu-ray at some point just to have the slightly better encode. But the German disc is almost as good. The only other thing I'd say, the Laserdiscs are still important for the English mono tracks on Fistful, because the Laserdiscs were before MGM started doing a lot of noise filtering, and those mono tracks started getting noise filtered even on the DVDs. And the for $few more, Laserdisc carries the slightly weird 1967 US release version. So it's missing a couple things, but then it's got some of the extended things in it. So it's a strange edit. It's got Indio's extended laugh at the beginning when he's broken out of prison, but yet it's, missing Eastwood's character being named as Monko because, man with no name, who has a name in all three films. That was chopped out of the original US print. So the Laserdisc is the same edit that I saw the battered MGM Vault print of at a Leone festival. And it's the same weird edit. It's missing some pieces, but it's got some of the extended pieces. So if you pick that up, you can't expect it to be exactly like the DVDs and have PCM mono that's missing from this. It's a slightly different version. Just like the 1990 widescreen pressing of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is the only release of the 1966 edit, and it has the Italian captions because they were using an Italian print source for most of it. So yeah, that's the long short answer, if that helps. Are you a fan of Romero's Day of the Dead? I gotta say, I've never really been big on zombies in general. Like, it's just not really my thing. I do appreciate some of the Romero films, and I appreciate that, with like Dawn of the Dead, he was trying to get into societal commentary by setting it in a shopping mall and things like that. I kind of mix up some of them, I have to be honest, because some of the titles are so similar. I had a friend who was a gigantic Romero nut and zombie nut in general, and a big practical gore fan. So I have seen most of them, and I got just totally overloaded with a lot of this stuff. And this was before zombies were a big thing. And okay, one of the missiles out. Okay. Like, I remember pieces of it, but I'd have to probably go back and really rewatch it. Yeah, that German double feature set is fantastic, and it's also super cheap, and it's a lot better than having to get the individual releases. But yeah, and if you that GBU disc is really great. And you're right, it is very film-like, and it's different in interesting ways to the '98 version, which was the first time they mixed in other sources, and that's where they caused some editing problems. And unfortunately, that's Kino's been going by the MGM versions, thinking they are the original theatrical versions, which they're not. Because for $few more in GBU, when they started mixing in other print sources to make a new clean master, they inadvertently mixed some stuff up and used versions that had things in the wrong order. So they have a lot of little quirks and stuff. So yeah, even though I finally did track down the '98 disc, the 1990 disc is actually a lot better. Even though some scenes look pretty close because they're using the same element at that time. Because the '98 disc is just a mix of different prints. But yeah, I cannot recommend the German Blu-ray double feature set highly enough. Even though the new Kino Phantom is good and has a nice new commentary and everything, the German disc is still the one to go for. Even with the inherent problems of the MGM Master, it's the only way to see the film in its entirety as it was supposed to be seen. So that's the one to go for. Okay. Yeah, I do remember him in that. Now that you say that, yeah, because I remember some of the scenes in the silo, and I remember the villain being very, very very potent, nasty. So yeah, I gotta rewatch that. Yeah, and it's always good when you have a villain that you kind of sympathize with, or you love to hate, or you love and hate. So anything to give people more dimensionality. The classic example would be at the end of Notorious, and I mean, I hope I'm not spoiling anything, because sometimes I hate to bring up movies because I don't want to spoil things, but tune out if you haven't seen Notorious. But at the end of Notorious, we have our heroes getting away from the house full of Nazis, and they get into the car and they're just barely going to make it away. But we don't go off with them. We instead stay with Claude Rains, whose character is Nazi, but we've come to sympathize with him for all this time because he's caught in a terrible predicament, and his own emotions are being played with and used against him. And instead of going off with our heroes, we stay with the Nazi who has to go back knowing that he's going to be killed, and we stay with him for his final walk and back into the house, and the door is thus closed, and we know he's going to be killed. Um, so yeah, thanks for dropping in. Yeah, I think I may have to call it a night too. My throat is getting super dry. Um, but yeah, thanks for dropping in, and yeah, absolutely. Um, oh, is Overlord is that was that the World War II zombie crossover thing? Because I remember seeing the trailers for that, and they try to act like it's going to be a World War II movie, and then it suddenly goes into full zombie mode, and I'm like, oh boy. um, no, I know I hadn't seen it because I would actually like to see a good World War II movie, and then I'm like, oh, it's zombies. Okay, I can see what they're going for. Um, yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and see that at some point. Um, yeah, the To Catch a Thief Blu-ray is really, really good. It's unfortunately, I think they only did a 2K scan of the VistaVision source, because VistaVision could have a lot more in it, but it is really, really great. Because that's been a tough film to transfer for a long time. I even read a mastering engineer once talking about the shirt Cary Grant wears towards the beginning and some of the opening reels. It's a black and white striped shirt, and it used to drive people crazy back in the day because anytime you had tight intersecting lines, it caused aliasing, and so it would just alias like crazy because he's moving around, and it's yeah, silly little things that they wouldn't have thought about back in the day. But yeah, I have the Laserdisc that's unfortunately pan and scan. And then I went through the various other versions. There was the first DVD that finally put it in letterbox, but it was really grainy and had tons of video noise. And then came the second DVD with new extras, but then the colors got changed. So there's all of a sudden when Carrie's crawling around the rooftops, there's green in there, and I'm like, well, that seems kind of strange. Like, I don't remember. And I had sold my old DVD to get the new one. And then finally, when Paramount did the Blu-ray, it is just a great Blu-ray. I wish they would do 4K of it. I don't know if it'll happen, but it's also one of the really good Hitchcock Blu-rays, actually. The Hitchcock library on Blu-ray is not very well treated, particularly the Universal ones, some of which are horrible. So, at least it's one I can recommend, and it's in great shape, and it's been treated well, and it's got I think it's got most of the extras, if I'm remembering correctly. Let's see. I think I have it on the shelf here somewhere. Yeah, I think this has. Okay, yeah, this does have most of the extras. There are a couple extras from I think it's the 2007 DVD, which I think I have over here. Let's see. Oh wait, no, I moved it. Oh well, I moved to the other shelf. But yeah, the 2007 disc has, I think it's a Peter Bogdanovich commentary, which is it's an okay listen, but it's not a particular reason to keep a disc with bad color. But I can't stand missing any extras. But yeah, that's one of the few really good Hitchcock Blu-rays besides the lovely Warner Archive ones, and then some that Kino's put out, and then. Kino's actually supposed to put out some of the restored British Hitchcock films finally, and some of the silent films, because they got restored a couple years ago. And a few came out on Blu-ray in the UK, and none over here besides Criterion doing The Lodger. But they're finally supposed to do some of the others, so that's going to be really awesome. And Kino has actually done pretty well with Hitchcock on Blu-ray, which has been surprising. I know I talk about Kino a lot, and some of their stuff leaves a lot to be desired. But that being said, the three Hitchcock titles they've done so far, Lifeboat has a really great transfer and is actually better than the Masters of Cinema one. Although I would like to pick that one up for the other extras. Their parodying case is excellent and has some nice new extras. And then their new release of Under Capricorn is really great and a big step up over the old out of print image DVD. So those are three Kino discs that actually have done really, really well and I've been very happy with. Which with Hitchcock titles is, you know, it's hit or miss because they fall under so many different studios. But ever buy a Laserdisc film, you're excited to pop in and then realize it has rot. Oh man. Um, you know, not really. The only thing I've run into is when I'm watching a disc and all of a sudden I start getting snow and stuff, and I didn't look on the database first to see that it was, you know, a possible rudder or something. So that's happened a couple times, but usually I know if a disc is supposed to be rotted because I always try and check. Like even if I'm looking at discs in a shop, I try and you know, look on my phone or something for a minute. Um, so sometimes, like if I see it's a Criterion that DADC pressed, I'm like, oh no, am I going to make it through? Because I hate getting to the end of something, and I would hate to have to, you know, stop because it's rotted to death. Um, the only one I ever put in that was rotted that I actually stopped. One of the first discs I ever got was Lost Highway, which is a super rotter, and I'm also not a giant David Lynch fan. But I was like, well, I'll watch this Laserdisc copy, you know. And I knew it was a rotter, but I wanted to, you know, see how bad it was. And you know, it starts. I get some snowy speckles, and I'm like, okay, okay, well, I can live with that. And then the sound comes up, and then there's some sizzling and cracking in the sound, and then the snow gets worse, and then you know, it starts going all over the place, and just so I just finally gave up. I think it might have actually played all the way through. I don't know if it would have just eventually, my player would have just ejected it. But yeah, that's the only one that I've had that was rotted so bad that I just gave up. um, although that would probably be a very strange way to watch that film. So, it's a strange film enough. Um, Oh, cool. Got the Criterion Blade Runner and then the DTS Con Air on the Rock. Oh, wow. I would love to find some of those. I've got the Criterion Blade Runner CLV. I need to get the CAV one. That's one I just have the CLV of. I have the standard rock, but I don't have the DTS of either of those. I'd love to have some of those, you know, mid-90s actioners with DTS glory. I do have the Rock on Blu-ray, and it has it's one of those Disney Buena Vista titles. Con Air is another one where it has a PCM 5.1 track. So I've got to compare that to the Laserdisc one day, because I'm pretty sure those and Enemy of the State is another that Disney did those and didn't mess around with the audio very much. They should be really good tracks because there are really a surprisingly few amount of Blu-rays that just have plain PCM 5.1 because a lot of studios don't want to take up the space, so they're paying for the Dolby or DTS licensing. Oh, cool! And got the T2 SE box. Yeah, that's got to be like a. I collect Laserdiscs. I have Top Gun and Terminator 2. You know, yeah. I didn't have one at first. I just had the regular special edition gatefold, and then I finally saw a nice cheap copy at one of the group sales, and I'm like, all right, I finally got to get one of these for myself because it looks so cool. Yeah, it's currently residing in my special box of box sets that refuse to fit on any shelf because they're just darn tall. So, yeah, it's just it's one of those. It's like maybe a half inch to an inch too tall for most cube shelves. So yeah, I've got a special side box with like that Fantasia, My Fair Lady, Dances with Wolves. You know, like the 4 or 5 that are just, you know, shelf killers. But yeah, it's I love the leather slip case and the metal plate, and then the glossy holder for the disc with the Terminator skeleton skull and flames. Oh, it's fantastic. Um, Bad Boys or Rambos or Rotters. I only have the widescreen First Blood, and it's fine. The only thing on that one is people in the database say that the surround channels are flipped, and so they're coming out of the wrong channels. I did finally get the older German Blu-ray set of those, so I'm gonna double check that just to see if that's indeed true. But the widescreen Rambos for 1 through 3 are they should all be fine. They're not too common to find though, so they probably will cost you a bit more. Um, Unfortunately, went to a store and I saw they had 1 through 3, and I saw somebody leaving with 2 and 3, and I'm like, oh no, where are you going? So, but 1 is my favorite, so that's the only one that I really like. But I would have liked to had all 3 because they have that awesome cover art, and they use the whole Laserdisc jacket. They just have a widescreen banner on top, and they look really cool. It's the best art for any of the films. But those should be fine. Bad Boys, I think it is a rotter because it is a Sony disc, and I probably was pressed at DADC. I don't know if it's like a critical rot disc on the database, but I do believe it is a rotter. Yeah, Terminator with the Fire Rend is one of the reasons I bought it. Yeah, it's cool. And then the flip side has, Arnold with the leather jacket and sunglasses, but with the red Terminator glow eye coming out. Yeah, oh, it's great. And I love how all the discs have custom jackets and labels, and the jackets have, like the little design and like the Cyberdyne Systems text font and stuff. Oh, okay, found a mistake in the first Tornado, I guess. Are you talking about in the sound remix on the like DVDs and stuff, or because the Laserdiscs all have the mono. I really love the remastered Laserdisc of the first one, and the standard widescreen one is also cool because it's less cleaned up, and it's actually got some cue changeovers in it. So the source they were using was run as a print somewhere at some time. So I like having both. And then I did find one of the harder to find pan and scan ones that came out before that, and that one also kind of has like a grittiness to the transfer. But that being said, I still love that THX remastered widescreen Terminator. That's long been one of my favorite laser discs. I got it earlier on when I was collecting, and it's just a great disc. It's one of those I can throw on and I forget I'm watching a laser disc until I get to the side change. And yeah, with the mono, you gotta have the mono. Oh, okay. When he's in the police station, he shoots the Spas 12, and it makes the noise of the machine gun. Well, you got dramatic license. It's like Leone even made sure that they recorded. They used rifle sound effects for the pistol shots and cannons sometimes for the rifles and machine guns and things. So I can get that. Oh, hey Pete. Yeah, just talking sound fun. You haven't missed very much. Okay. Oh, okay. Talking about Sleeping Beauty. Let's see. Saying it's accurate to the 70mm prints. Okay. Yeah, because that was the Disney film that was in Super Technorama 70, which was really interesting. They did that because it's still in their pure hand drawn era, and they were having to use the extreme width of the frame, and that wasn't really used on. I don't even know if that was used on a lot of animated features, but it's not a common format for animated films to use, and it would be really amazing to see an original print of that, but it probably would be in pretty bad shape now. Yeah, if you're talking about the Blu-ray though, there is a lot of the Disney revisionism going on there with the color timing and then erasing of lines and things. And then I think they remixed it to 7.1. It's either 5.1 or 7.1, but I think it's 7.1. There's still people who debate if the older pan and scan Laserdisc has more accurate color than the 97 remastered one. And even the 97 one, as good as it is, it's not the full width because it's one of those where they only gave you 235 for a long while instead of giving you the wider. I think it's 255 on the later ones. Even though Super Technorama 70 could be even. Well, if it was 70, if it was a 70 millimeter print, it would have been 2.21 to 1 like Spartacus. But if it was a for some reason, I think the 35 prints are 2.55, and I think that's what the full Blu-ray width is. But yeah, it's one of those where I think it should look stunning, but it just doesn't. And I think all around the Laserdisc box set, the 97 one is probably um, relatively close, and it gives you a 5.1 AC3 track that does sound pretty good. But the older one, I've seen like some screen captures of the older pan and scan disc, and the color's a lot more vivid. So I don't know, maybe the 97 one with some of the color of the old pan and scan one. Um, but yeah, I wish they would just give us plain, unadulterated, unmucked about with transfers of some of these because like Sleeping Beauty should be seen the way it was intended to. Like I bet if you found deteriorating print of that from 1959 or 1960 on a reissue or something, I bet it would still knock your socks off. Like it's probably got to be stunning to look at. Um, oh yeah, some do 4Ks have horrible audio. You have to turn the volume up and down. Yeah, I think they just want us to be tied to our remotes, have them glued in our hands. Yeah, it's part of that you have dynamic range compression, then you have people using nothing but sound bars or their phones, and then people worrying about mixing specifically for those and screwing over everybody with a real home theater or something. But it's also most people just don't care about sound anymore. Most people just are like, well, this is just going to show on Netflix streaming with stereo, so what's it matter? And that's it. And now it seems with everybody going for the Atmos remixes, it's also, I don't have Atmos, so I have to listen to stuff on 5.1 or 7.1. So I can only guess where the Atmos comes into play, but I'm also starting to wonder, are people even worrying about the 7.1 down mix of an Atmos track? I've heard a couple of music releases that I've read great reviews, and they get remixed into Atmos and get a 5-star review. And I listen to it in 7.1 and I'm like, this sounds terrible. Um, and I have heard some films that were mixed for Atmos in 7.1 and they sounded fine, like John Wick is one, for example. Um, and then I've heard some great 7.1 tracks, but it's also, I don't know if there's anybody out there, leading the charge for great sound mixing. We have people out there leading the charge for bad sound mixing, like every Chris Nolan movie. It's like if you buy a Christopher Nolan movie on Blu-ray, it's like trying to convince you your home theater is broken somehow. That was why I watched Inception on Blu-ray for the first time a couple years ago, and I thought like one of my speakers had come loose, or I had to rewire something, or something came unplugged from my receiver. Like I thought something was off somewhere, and so I stopped the movie and I got a flashlight out and I'm looking around everywhere, and I pull my receiver out and I'm like, okay, everything's fine. Okay, is my receiver going bad? Like what's going on? Is the disc scratched? And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is a Christopher Nolan movie. Let me hit play again. Oh my God, this is how the sound mix is. Oh, jeez. I just spent 20 minutes convinced something was broken. uh, let's see. There's a YouTuber ranting on the Ghostbusters 4K claiming it had terrible white balance and didn't look like the print he saw, but said the 4K remastered Blu-ray is fantastic. Um, Well, you will come into different light levels with like prints and things, and also depends on what he would have seen and was it run right, or was it an old print, or was it well taken care of. There's a lot of variables. But also, if you're you got to think about, is their setup calibrated? Do they have a good 4K display? Do they have a set that does HDR right? Because, if you don't have one that does full HDR correctly and just says that it does, that can also, color your 4K experience wrongly. And then you go back to the standard 1080p remastered disc and it'll look fine in comparison. So I would say it might be something like that because I have not seen. I think the only one where the remastered Blu-ray is better is supposed to be Goodfellas because they messed up the. I think the brightness levels are messed up on that, so they're elevated too high on the 4K or something. And so that's why I went ahead and picked it up because the remastered Blu-ray is much better than the old one and doesn't have the problems of the 4K. That's the only one I know of where the remastered Blu-ray is supposed to be better in any way. Especially with Warner Bros. Disc because they seem to just want to, slap out a 1080p disc with a bunch of teal on it that's not on the 4K one, and just, well, there you go. You wanted a Blu-ray in there. There you go. It's a piece of junk. um, oh, Mitch just got to check out. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for dropping in, man. Good to have you. See you next Tuesday. uh, yeah, yeah. Oh, it's fun nowadays. Yeah. Say, turn it up. I can't hear what they're saying. And then in the next room, they're like, turn it down. It's too loud. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think people understand that you have to get to a certain level to be able to get the experience intended by the mixers and also do it in a home environment. That's why you always I think that's part of the reason why that you're supposed to, have your speakers at home at 75 dB, which is 10 decibels less than the theater 85 dB standard. Um, I don't think that really applies for Laserdisc, so I usually don't bother with that. But I think that does make a difference for modern films, and I think a lot of studios just think about that and think about it's going to be in a home. So, as certain folks in the community will rant about near field remixing, that's part of the reason why it's done. But yeah, also it's just plain bad mixing about having to go back and forth. You should have, a good clear mix that could be at a certain level and then get the variables back and forth without suddenly going to like ear bleedingly loud and then back to whisper quiet. Um, no, man, 4K went to the RPX Regal Theater and saw freaking Black Bars. Oh my gosh, I saw them there too. I've been to an RPX once, and I'm like, I'm good. That's it. This is terrible. It was they converted they converted the best theater in the giant Regal that we have here that I saw some great shows in when I was a kid, and they converted it to RPX, and they basically kind of ruined it because they, put in bigger seats. The screen got a bit smaller, really. And yeah, you just see black letterboxing bars. And I'm like, this is a joke. And then very few of the RPXs have Dolby Atmos. They mostly have that Barco 11 channel system fakery going on. And they're supposed to have double stack projectors for better light, but I couldn't tell if it does or not. They did finally build a Dolby Cinema location near me. They converted one of the other big theater auditoriums that's still around. It's now owned by AMC, but they converted that into a Dolby Cinema, and it's just a bit of a drive. And every time I remember that they finally did it, I look it up, and it's just junk playing there. And I don't want to drive like an hour out of the way to finally hear Atmos for the Aladdin remake or something. I have to pay like a $15 ticket and then drive all the way back. Um, but yeah, it's because there's just one of them. It's like as soon as the next thing comes out, something's gone in like 2 days. But I'm hoping to finally go check that out at some point. But they just opened it like maybe a month ago, and nobody knows it's there. I had to call around all the different theaters because I was trying to see Fallout and Atmos, and I finally found out they were going to add it at this one, and the people at the theater didn't even know what Dolby Cinema was or what was being installed in their building, and I'm like, okay, I'll just explain to you in general terms. Have you heard of Dolby Atmos? No? Okay. Well, it can have up to 128 channels in the ceiling, and it's about sound objectivity. And you're supposed to have dual stack 4K projectors and improved seating and so on and so forth. And they're like, Oh, that's why they were working on the ceiling, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's why." Didn't they send you an email or a memo or anything? No? Okay, well, so at least there's one, within, 250 miles I can check out, so that's what I'm intending to finally go check out because that is the only one of these, uh premium theater offerings that's technically supposed to be premium, and it shouldn't have black letterboxing bars in it. But in this day and age, with even the premium screens being junk, I wouldn't be surprised if they did. um, well, you know, I think I could get along with Blu-ray critics, but I would also ask them, guys, why aren't you getting into more detail? Like, uh, I write reviews of discs sometimes, and I talk in 3 paragraphs about the video history of the film, and it's more than all the other reviews of this disc on the entire internet combined. Like the ones that really get me are the ones I see on random websites, and they get a screener copy of something, and it's like uh, it's like the description of the film that's almost like the back of the box and says it's pretty good or it's a cheesy genre flick and it's got these extras and that's it. And it's got some screenshots. And I'm like, that's not a review. You know, like, can I get a screener copy and take a whack at it? But then again, even though I don't very often agree with the ratings that the Blu-ray.com guys give, I do think they do a pretty good job at the write-ups on a lot of the films if you actually, click down and actually scroll through and read that. So I do appreciate they at least do that. And of course, some are better than others, but yeah, on the audio quality portion, they are not hitting the mark at all. And then nobody talks about prior editions outside of if it loses any extras from like a DVD or something. And half the time, not even that much detail. RBX is kind of like IMAX. We should see black bars. Yeah. Oh man, you do not want to get me started on IMAX. I have always had issues with IMAX, and I'm not a fan. I'm like I would like to see proper 70 millimeter come back. Um, I don't like the 1:4:4 ratio. I don't like the curvature and the fact that it gives you a big neck ache when you come out. I don't like the boominess of the sound. I don't like the even though they have their own exclusive IMAX channel systems, I've never heard very good sound in an IMAX auditorium. It's usually just too boomy and doesn't have a lot of detail. And yeah, it's just a giant mixed bag for me. I don't get the whole the love fest for IMAX stuff. I'm like, if you want to do large format, do large format. Go shoot 70 millimeter. And do it right. Um, Not going to be very many places to show it, but you can also print it back down to 35 or do a high res scan of it if you want to. And at the very worst, you could go show it in an IMAX theater if you wanted to. Okay. Okay, so that guy had a 4K set that had HDR and still had a lot of problems. Okay. And thought Ghostbusters 2 looked good and Christine as well. Okay. Yeah, it's also weird. It seems like some 4Ks come out and it's just like, I can look at some of them and it looks so strange at first. Some of the things that are coming out, and especially how light and color play differently with these, HDR grading. So part of it may be just getting used to, improved technologies revealing things, but then also it could be stuff that was changed, whether it's correctly or incorrectly. Um, so yeah, but also Ghostbusters has had an interesting history. Like I still like the look of the old 1999 DVD because it looks like the broadcast I grew up with. And I'd love to get the Criterion Laserdisc one day, and I've seen screenshots of it, and it also looks relatively similar to that. And then the later DVDs and first Blu-ray came around, and those looked pretty different. And then the mastered in 4K reissue Blu-ray that came out, and that looked better. But I still like the old transfer for some reason. So yeah, I think it's also individual preferences a little bit there too. And sometimes you just have to acknowledge, well, I like the other one better, but it's technically not as accurate, you know. Um, and then there's ones where there's still a giant color debate because, some people still swear that Warner Brothers has recolored The Searchers wrong. And Rio Bravo's another one where they say they colored it wrong. And if you look at it, well, it does kind of look weird, actually. So those are ones where I actually think I agree with people. But then practically every version of those films, well, on The Searchers, they all kind of look different. But Rio Bravo, the old DVD, and Laserdisc look pretty much the same. So I don't know what happened there on the Blu-ray. Maybe some people got too crazy with turning the color knobs. Yeah, yeah. I heard a sample of the PCM on the Criterion Ghostbusters. It sounds really nice. And of course, that film was Dolby Stereo anyway, so that should be the way you should listen to it to begin with. I really love Dolby Stereo tracks, and I love listening to them matrixed out. Um, again, I'm a giant audio purist, so I like the original formats, even if it is matrix over discrete. But a lot of times when they make those discrete tracks, they unfortunately, add compression, EQ, and it doesn't sound the same, even though it should be technically, fully realized because it's discrete channel usage. But that being said, the last time I watched Ghostbusters, I watched it on the Blu-ray 1 and 2 set that used the 4K transfers, and it looked and sounded great. It was fine. I was pretty happy with that. I didn't really have any problems. So when the 4K came out, and that looks ostensibly even better, I'm like, at least Sony keeps going back to the well and trying to improve it. And it's Sony instead of Warner Brothers, so I at least have, if Sony goes back and does something, I feel like they're the one studio that at least tries to get it right every time. Um, with varying levels of success, and I think they would probably be one of the only ones to admit if they got something wrong, and went back and corrected it. Um, and yeah, that's another thing. People can have certain preferences for transfers, even if it's not accurate. Yeah. And that's like the first thing they'll come up with, if they're talking about, you like the older video version. Well, that's not perfect. It's not accurate to this. It's got a magenta bias. It's got da 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 da. So, you have to be able to acknowledge that stuff. And it's not like we can go pull like pristine answer prints or dye transfer prints out and say, well, okay, I have a reference now, because you just can't do that. So. And even those are not necessarily pure perfect references, so it just varies. Um, but yeah, it's a multifaceted issue, just like all the stuff we talk about. And the problem is most people are not going to take the time to do more research and be more open-minded and understand that it's not a clear cut and dry thing. Um, so yeah, that's spot on. I will say though, this does bring up a point. I posted it a couple times on some of the forums. The Batman Returns has just totally gone into teal land. I I was gonna wait for the box set on them, but I did find two of them. There was I found a really good deal on two of them, so those are on the way to me, and I will be going through those whenever they get here. And then I've got to get the other two. But I was going to wait for the box set, but it was somebody selling their 4K copies of two of the Bat films on the Blu-ray forums for a really cheap price. So I got them for like two for the price of one, basically. So I couldn't pass that up. They were just using the digital copies, which I never need those anyway. So, but yeah, Batman Returns should not be teal. Like I have seen a vintage 1992 Fuji print recently in the past 3 years, and it's deep blue, not teal. So that is totally not accurate. And I know I'm not crazy on that one because I actually saw it. And none of the video transfers so far have gotten that blue just quite right. So yeah, I mean, the new transfer does look good in a lot of other ways, but it's teal. That shouldn't be there. So that's gonna drive me crazy. Um, Okay, yeah, I remember people talking about there's, like, some slight DNR usage on the, Aliens Blue, but yeah, it's not, like, 100%, but it was also shot on, like, a super grainy film stock at the time period, so, that's interesting to know that DVD might have better color. Hmm. Yeah, exactly. See, that's the thing that they're talking about. It's not teal and looks blue and everything. Um, and also, all most of the screenshots have been from the 1080p disc, which on Batman '89 has teal in the highlights, which are not on the 4K. But they finally posted 4K captures over at Capsaholic, which you can go and look at. Um, Unfortunately, I haven't seen them physically yet. I've got that. It's 89 and Forever that are on the way to me, so I'll have to get Returns and Batman and Robin finally. But yeah, if you go and you look even on Capsaholic at the 4K comparison versus the remastered 1080p, it's still in there. Like the blues have gone into teal. It, it I mean, it may not look quite as bad in motion, so I'm gonna have to wait until I can physically see the disc myself. But what's there, it does look like the deep blue cast has gone over into teal in the tinting. So I don't know if it's something that you could try and color correct yourself, but it's like it looks more like a blanket tint than anything else. But yeah, if you actually see a print of it, all of the snowlet scenes that are have that bluish cast are very deeply tinted blue. They're not teal. Like I always knew they were blue on video, and I loved the color depth of that print. And it wasn't just the blues; it was the depth of the interiors of Wayne Manor, especially when the fireplace was going, and the skin tones looked really nice, and the darkness was there, so you didn't have the visibility of the sets as much. So it just looked gorgeous, and I was so excited for these 4Ks. And I mean, it does look good in other ways, so I think it's kind of a mixed bag. I think they're all kind of a mixed bag, unfortunately. It's sad they didn't get a nice big treatment with brand new extras, and we're just getting the old ones ported over. And, yes, they've gotten 4K masters, but they all got, Atmos remixes, and there's new effects in Returns, but not like '89. And there's apparently a tweak or two in Forever. So I'm waiting to get that and go through that and hopefully not, put my fist through the wall too many times. I've already heard of one that they've changed that doesn't make any sense. Apparently, they when the Batwing breaks through the Riddler signal to reveal the bat signal, and then Gordon standing on police headquarters on the rooftop going, "Yay! Yeah!" And then telling Batman to go, and you get the thumbs up. Apparently, they cut out him saying go, so he just says it once now instead of like cheering. Why? I have no idea, but I apparently they know better than the original sound designers, right? Right? So I'll be curious to also check out those because I'm sure the sequels probably do not have their original audio as well, since '89 doesn't, even though they have 5.1 tracks. So, in terms of Blu-ray, Predator Ultimate Edition is the worst, but in terms of 4K, T2 is trash. Yes, yeah, I can't really say it any better. I'd say Blu-ray, it's Predator, the first Patton, the first Spartacus, uh, and the early, DNR nightmares. But, at least at that point in time, they really didn't know what they were doing. You could, understand that. But yeah, that T2 4K disc is just, I mean, it keeps going on sale for under $10. They cannot give it away. I hope everybody who bought it sent their copies back. It's terrible. And apparently, they took the 3D version and it was a 2K scan, and then they redid it and retweaked it and everything, and then just that's what you're getting on the 4K disc. So it's a scan converted to 3D, and then it's not the 3D version, and it's only 2K being upscaled and upconverted, and it has all the grain taken out, the colors messed with, so it's like 10 kinds of nasty. Um, I mean, you wouldn't even think it was shot on film anymore. I mean, like one day I wouldn't be surprised if you buy a copy of T2 and it's just been replaced by a 2.5 hour long video game cutscene. You know, it's like, why doesn't he just go ahead and make a video game cutscene version? Because I'm sure that would please him more. I don't know. Yeah, it's awful. I remember when it first came out, it was around Black Friday, and it was down to like 3.99. And I thought about it for a minute, and I'm like, no, I can get the 2015 disc for the same price. The 2015 Blu-ray, that's the best Blu-ray. It's not perfect, but it's better than the other ones. It's got a better encode. So I got the 2015 disc instead, and it was the number one seller. So they sold more of the old 2015 Blu-ray than the 4K disc marked down to 3.99. Yeah, yeah, it would be really cool, and I'd be all over that because I'm the one guy who likes seeing battered prints or whatever they get from the studio, or if it's missing stuff or beat up or it's got some it's just all over the place because I that's part of what I like about Laserdisc. Sometimes you never know what it's gonna be like transfer wise, but there is one that is kind of like that. If I can, I have it on the shelf here somewhere, maybe. Can't remember if it's on this one or the other one. Um, where did you go? Oh man, where did you go? I know it's here somewhere. Oh, here it is. This is the one case where I think that actually did happen. The Shout Collector's Edition of Dracula Prince of Darkness. This carries two versions on it. Studio Canal did their master in the UK and unfortunately applied a crap ton of DNR to it. But it is from master material, has really nice color. And Shout reissued that here, and it does look a little bit better, but it's still very grain free. But then they also commissioned a scan of what was in the Fox vaults because this film came out via Fox here in the States. And apparently, the US version, the credits are a little different, but that's the only difference. But it's a separate transfer and it's got vividly different color. It's a lot darker. Some of the scenes are bluish instead of like yellowish. It's got lots of grain. And even though it's not pristine like the other one, it is a much better presentation. And I would love to know more about the source use, but it's also done very hands off. So it's like an as is transfer. So it's, not exactly what you would want to watch in a home theater environment, but it's also literally like if you were able to pull that vault element off the shelf, give it a scan, plop it on a disc, and watch it at home. So it is really really cool for that, and I recommend this enough just for that particular transfer. Because otherwise you're just stuck with the other Studio Canal DNR one. And they did add some nice new extras and this nice artwork, but that's the one instance that I could think of off the top of my head where you get a you know studio master, and then a like a direct film scan, and you can choose between the two, and it is like wildly different in some scenes. I don't know why so much, but yeah, the if you can look up some screen captures online and some comparisons, like it is vividly wildly different in places. um, Okay, yeah, Pete's looking for the 2015 T2. It's got the Skynet edition. Yeah. Um, I kind of held off for a while because I knew there was DNR in that, and then I finally read about the 2015 one being a bit better. It doesn't have all the extras, so what I went and did was I tracked down all the DVD special editions and got them for like in 99-cent bins. So I have the two main DVD special editions. So now I can watch through all the extras. So I think between the Laserdisc boxes, the two DVD specials, and the 2015 disc, I think I have all of the main extras. So that was my cheap route of trying to get all of the extras in one place. Not really good for shelf space, but at least it was cheaper, and I didn't have to buy that accursed 4K disc. Alrighty. Well, I guess that'll do us for this lovely Tuesday. I want to thank everybody for such a wonderful stream, and gonna try and keep this a regular Tuesday event for at least the time being. Just glad to know that everybody can hang out for a bit and listen to me ramble and ramble and stuff. And hopefully, I'll get those two Batmans in, and I can dig into those because I don't know if anybody's going to pay as much attention to the sound remixes on the sequels, but I'm really excited. Like I said, I was going to wait for the box sets, but those two were literally like just he opened them up and took out the digital copies, and it was so cheap I couldn't say no. So I'll have to get the other two to finally do a full comparison of all four. But hopefully I can dig through those two if they come in before next Tuesday. So until then, everybody have happy hunting and happy watching, and thanks for another great stream, and have a good night, everybody. Take care, 4K. Take care, everybody. Have a good one, all. No, I should say, have a better one.